good to see you.
Yeah.
Then it goes away.
Wandering around, getting lost. Hi.
I'm sorry.
Did they say?
Good.
So here's the thing,
What's that?
so nobody said
Going
anything
okay?
about
Yeah.
going away.
Good.
That needs
We're
to
glad
be
to have you.
said.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey, you guys ready to go?
because I looked at that and I'm like,
Hey, we're on.
yeah.
Save that one for you.
Okay. Good to see you, man. How's everything?
I don't know, Jordan keeps me in line. Between Jordan and Brock, so, but now that you're here, it'll be good. Yeah. I just only have 2 kids, so it's pretty easy for me. My youngest is 18, my oldest is 21, so it's nice. We're getting ready for graduation, I guess, if my son can pull it through, right?
Okay. Oh, no, you're good, man. All right, so first of all, thank you all for coming out this evening. Got a pretty full agenda, so we'll dive in. We'll start with our opening ceremony. So I'd just like to ask somebody to give the blessing this evening. If you would, yeah.
Be great. Dear and kind Heavenly Father, we come before Thee at this time, express gratitude to Thee for the goodness of our lives and the opportunity to serve. Heavenly Father, we pray a blessing to be with us tonight as we visit. We pray that we'll be able to be guided and to be able to do those things that are in the best interest of this good city and the residents. We also, Heavenly Father, pray a blessing to be with our new mayor and with all those who help and serve with her. Bless them with gentle, good hearts, and bless them that they'll be able to work together and in unity and to be able to work in the best interest of the good people of this city. And we express love for Thee, and we do all this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you. So let's do introductions. Let's start with you, Jordan.
Jordan Stevenson.
Patrick Hine.
Sean Chilcote.
Brock Thane.
Alan Farnes.
John Lovelace.
Stacy Harvard.
Gary Hatch.
Bruce Rigby.
Ryan Judd.
All right. So just as we're going through things today, just want to remind everybody, our mission statement is Kaysville City Power and Light's mission is to provide reliable electricity with superior customer service at a competitive price to the residents and business in Kaysville City. Also, just as a reminder, as we're going through these through our presentations and things, to make sure you guys are speaking in the microphones, just so that they can hear us online. So next item here is approval of the meeting minutes. Did everyone have a chance to look at those? Okay. So I wasn't at the last meeting, but I would entertain a motion for approval of the meeting minutes from last December. I think it's the 3rd or the 5th.
I will
Yeah.
make a motion to approve the minutes.
Are there?
What's that?
There's also November's too.
And November's, yeah. So I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from December and November, each at the same time, if that's all right.
Are there any questions to the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Do we need a second, though?
Oh, okay, I'll second it. He did a great job.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Any opposed? Okay. So the next one, wanted to just just turn the time over to Ryan Judd. He has prepared some information on the AMI and the fiber optics. He sent out on the Dropbox the different proposals. So if you guys have had time to look at that, I don't know if you have or haven't, but I think that we're prepared. But with questions, we've all loaded up our question log for you. But with that, I'll turn it over to you for
Okay, I hope we can
presentation.
answer everything.
Okay, well, I just kind of wanted to give you a background of kind of where we've been and kind of put everything in perspective. So in April of 2006, we visited Idaho Falls, kind of at the beginnings of this process of AMI, and we went through their system and what they have. They have an Elster system there. And we visited with Mark Reed and Jackie Flowers, and got a really good idea of how an AMI works. And that was really our first introduction to AMI and the hardware, software side of things. It was interesting because we saw kind of what their struggles were and what their problems they were having with the AMI was, and but we also saw a lot of their benefits and their successes, and so that was kind of a cool experience. And then in June of 2016, we started drafting an RFP, but that proved really difficult because we're still learning about all the ins and outs of AMI. And then in March of 2017, we toured Provo City's AMI installation, and it was an Eaton installation, and that was really eye-opening because we saw their hardware and their software and talked to their IT people, and it kind of got a good feel for what that AMI does. Over the course of time, we talked to several other entities, and then we reached out to B&A, or not B&A, but do you remember the contractor? Tony Felstild, and he helped us write an RFP, complete the RFP. So in May of 2017, we released that RFP, and then in July, by July we had received four vendors had given us proposals for an AMI system. And those four vendors were Honeywell, Eaton, Landis & Gear, and Census. We interviewed three of the four. We interviewed Honeywell, Eaton, and Landis & Gear. And it was pretty apparent that there were only two that would really serve our needs very well. I can't remember who on this panel was it you, Alan, who was there at our interviews? Okay. So we interviewed the top two. We came up with the top two basically as a staff, and that was Landis & Gear and Eaton. And to be right honest with you, we felt pretty strongly that either one would serve the city very well. The software was very comparable. The hardware was robust and adequate. But after several meetings and hashing it out over several months, staff came to a decision that it would probably be best to go with Eaton for a number of reasons. Some of those reasons were the meter agnostic. Eaton is meter agnostic, and so I think that's a benefit long term as we move forward. We have options in meter brands. We don't have to be locked into one, but we can use Landis & Gear with an Eaton product, or we can use Elster meters or a number of other meters that are available. So the costs are a little bit more expensive with Eaton. When we buy meters that are configured for Eaton, or we buy other manufacturers' meters that were configured for Eaton, but I think that's a small extra cost in comparison to what we actually get. If we end up having problems with a specific meter, then we can move on to a different one, and we don't have to change AMI products. Anyway, so that was kind of part of our thought process as we went through this. The other thing that we were looking at was an integration between water and power. So AMI system joined together, and we met together with the water department many times, and if we gave them a choice only between Eaton and Landis & Gear, they would have chose Eaton as a product, because Eaton supports Neptune meters among others. They also support Badger and a number of other water meters, but Landis+Gyr does not. They would have to buy a Landis+Gyr type meter. So again, the meter agnostic issue came into play. But after all the discussions within the staff, we think that that joining the two systems together is just going to be not feasible for a lot of reasons. Right now, they have meters installed that are Neptune meters, enough that it would make it cost prohibitive to add or to convert those meters into the Eaton system. And besides that, they're happy with the product they're using right now, and it's compatible with its own AMI system, and it's not going to be that much to bring it into an AMI type system. So our recommendation is to just keep them separate. One of the reasons why this project is important to me is because I really am looking forward to streamlining the meter reading process. If you've ever gone up and talked to our billing people, there is a gigantic disconnect between the number of meter reading systems they have between water and power. There's like 5 or 6 different methods they're bringing in meter data. So consolidating everything into one system is going to be really beneficial. The power department has 2 different methods to read meters. They read power meters by hand, and then they read the residential meters with a handheld AMR device. And the water system's even worse. They've got 2 different AMR systems where they drive around, and they're separate. So they've got a Neptune system and a master meter system, and they're separate programs, separate handheld devices. And then they read the meters by hand. So there's 3 different types of meters that they're reading. So I would really like to push the city to try to clean up the way we read meters. And AMI is an awesome solution, just simply for in-house type efficiencies. It'll also provide a more accurate method of reading meters, and we'll be able to bring that data in a way that's a lot cleaner and more less inaccuracies. So it'll also help us with customer resolution of issues. So we'll be able to have real-time data, up to date all the time, accessible to the customer service representatives. And so that's kind of where we're at. I didn't really prepare a lot of slides that relate to the meter system, but here's just kind of these are all things that you guys know. When we're looking at when we're looking at AMR, it's what we currently have with our power system for our residential. AMR really only benefits billing and metering. And aside from that, there's really not very many benefits. But with advanced meter infrastructure, you get all the benefits of AMR, but you get also the benefits of planning, operations, engineering, customer service, asset management, dispatch, demand management, disconnects. All these things are, things that you get added on. So the list of things that AMI benefits is a lot bigger than what we get with our current system AMR. And the AMI system will be far superior to what we have. I talked about this in council. The costs between Eaton and Landis+Gyr were fairly negligible. When you look at just the cost of the AMI system itself. It's really, not that expensive, $250,000 plus some recurring costs. And then your bulk of your cost is in the meter, is in the meters themselves. And I want to correct myself here is about the customer portal. It was quoted in the Eaton product, but it wasn't in Landis & Gear, and so I just omitted it from our discussions because I wanted to compare. This was in a comparison. I wanted to compare apples to apples. So, but there is an add-on for $11,000 for the customer web portal, which will allow customers to log on, access their meter data.
Is
and
that
a number
just a
of things.
one-time thing, the 11,000?
There's a one-time cost, $11,000, and I think there's a maintenance cost on top of that. Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm not sure exactly what that is. We'll have to figure that out. You have to have if we're gonna do prepay metering, then you have to have the customer web portal in order to make that work. And there is an annual cost of that recurring cost. So
Do we have businesses or customers right now that are doing prepaid?
we have no ability to do prepaid.
Okay,
with
so that's
AMI.
not that, but I mean, Bruce, I'll ask you, is there anybody out there wanting to prepay?
I haven't heard anything, but that's maybe because we haven't offered it, I don't know.
Okay.
That's mostly, the places where I've seen that, they're using it as more in a college town where, these college kids want to prepay and have so much money and things. So
Right.
I'm not really sure how much use we'd get out of it here.
Okay.
Or how much demand.
It would be an option for somebody who's behind on payments. You can put them onto something like that instead of having a deposit. Just put them on a prepay plan.
But I'm wondering if the cost is worth, I don't know.
I don't know.
With the AMI, just real quick, where it'll all be plugged in, you basically, and I noticed on there that they had the fault locators, which is a good feature because you'll able to isolate outages very quickly and where they're at and who's being affected. Can you also control the meter to where you could turn a customer off remotely?
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and that was a part of this quote. So all these meters have remote disconnects, at least the residential 220.
Right.
And then hopefully in the future, we'll have meters available to us that will do a 320 disconnect. But right now, that's not available. Oh, and limiting functions too. So we'll be able to, yeah, cut the amperage down to, what is it, 20 or 40 amps or so, 10 amps per customer for limiting.
Now, when would you do that? If they're over bill, but say they have life support, I don't know how else to say that, but a need to where you couldn't shut them off, but you could greatly reduce them so they can't run the...
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I know in the wintertime, we don't shut people off. We just
Right.
limit their power
Right.
consumption.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's all kind of other benefits, time of use, daily kilowatt consumption. We can identify losses in the system, improve our rate studies, bidirectional metering, prepaid metering. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff that we can do with it. Outage management, and outage management is something that I wanted to touch on. With a system like this, the power guys will be able to actually, when there's an outage, they'll know before the customers might even know that they're having a power outage, and where it is, and which meters it's affecting, and which circuits it's on. And right now, we have no visibility into that at all. The only way they know that they have a power outage is by phone calls that are coming in. And so the AMI is a two-way communications between the meter and the servers. And so we can set up notifications and all kinds of stuff that allow us to know in advance what's happening in the network. So we can become more proactive in the network. So
Just one last question on the AMI. How is it talking to us?
So it's talking via a mesh kind of network. It's a two-way mesh network, 900 megahertz.
Okay, so the meters are talking to themselves. You don't have to have a phone line, you don't have to have cable or fiber optic to a home. It's the meters are talking to the meters. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, the meters. I have a on a different PowerPoint slide. I can show you if you want the topology. Okay.
The only reason that I asked that question is, and I'll just use my home for an example. We have a DSL line coming in, but I have no phone line. And that's becoming more prevalent because people are using their cell phones as their primary form of communication, so they drop a line. So I was just making sure that somebody in my circumstance where we don't need a utility hookup for the meter to work.
Absolutely not.
Meters.
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, so the AMR meters communicate on a mesh network. It's 900 megahertz radios basically, and it's actually a lower power radio than what the AMR system is that we currently have. So it's better that way. But it's mesh network, so the meters talk to a collector, and the collector sends data on via a cellular connection or a hardline connection back to a data center.
And what is the cost per each on the meters? Roughly how many meters are in that cost?
So there's a lot of different. This is kind of the meter cost rolled up. For a lot of different meters, there's like 8,300 meters that are at $125 a piece, and then there's several different style or different. I don't know. There's like a 320 disconnect. The different classes of meters. And what we did when we put this out to RFP is we just looked at our network. We said, okay, we have 8,000 some odd residential meters, and we have this many 500 commercial meters, and that's what we put in the RFP to give us numbers on, so to give us prices on. So I just bundled that all up into the 1.3. Of course, that price will change because we have more meters now than when we put out the RFP. But I don't think we were as careful as we probably could have been when we put together the RFP on the numbers. So that number will fluctuate, and I think also we'll have to negotiate with Eaton on the actual meter that we want, which might make the price go up just a little bit or the price go down a little bit. It'll depend on the meter that we choose. So I don't remember which meter was actually bid. Do you guys remember which meter it was?
125 and the Landis gear was like 145.
There you go. So there were different prices of different meters that we had a choice of, which we wouldn't have had with the Landis and Gear option.
So would this proposal cover future orders as well? Or, are we buying spares? It sounds like we have to increase our order anyway, but would this future, if we select them, and I know that it's meter agnostic, so you could pick somebody else, but would we, suggestion would be that we negotiate a amount so that we could buy some, if we bought 10, for example, or 20, is that amount already predetermined that it's 125 in that bulk purchase, or how does that work?
Let me clarify that. Let me clarify the question. So we put this on. Everybody gets AMI, and all of a sudden we have a housing project come through. Now we're short 150 meters. When we go to Eaton, are they going to honor 125 per meter again because we already have the package, or is the meter purchase based upon how many we're buying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense,
do we
but
get
I'm
a
not
discount
sure. I'm not sure of the answer. I do have Eaton here. I have Brian Simpson that could maybe answer the question. Is that possible, Brian? You could answer that. Okay. Maybe come to the podium here.
Yeah, thanks for your time. As far as the pricing goes, because we're meter agnostic, we purchase meters in bulk, and then those are sold across the whole, all of our customers, so everybody shares that load. And any advanced, additional meters that you would need would be honored at the contract price. And we could certainly set a time frame in there, what you guys are looking for, we can certainly talk about.
Well, Bruce, how many, or maybe even Gary can answer this, how many would we keep around? I'm assuming we keep 50 commercial and 100 residential just in case.
Yeah, roughly around that area.
You know, a tree comes down, rips one out.
Yeah.
You got to have some way to replace it. And then what about with the new state-of-the-art ones? How often do they have to be? Do they have to be calibrated, or where they're networked, you can instantly see what's going on? I mean, do they have to go in for calibration?
I don't know.
No, they don't have to go into calibration. So with us, buying meters, regardless of which one you get, it's a one-stop shop. It all goes through us. Okay, programming questions, warranty, all that comes through us. You know, we won't put that burden on you to, you know, deal with individual meter manufacturers. We handle all that.
So I'm assuming that there's a program and somebody from the power department would have a laptop. They could plug right onto the meter, do any work that they needed to do without taking the meter out of service like the old way, right?
Right. Yeah, since it's a two-way system, you can do all the diagnostics directly from your desktop.
Oh.
Yep, everything. So we bring all the meter logs back in, not just, you know, not just reading data, we bring all the logs back as well. And we can look at it at real time. Also, we set up alarms in the software, so if there's any alarms or events that pop up in the meter, those come right back. And they go ahead and report, it could be emailed off, and there's different status levels you can set as priorities. So, you know, if a certain type of event comes in, is everybody notified immediately, or are they notified in a report first thing in the morning, that type of thing. As far as meter calibrations, all that's done at the factory. So what shows up on your docks is a meter with the AMI module integrated, all pre-programmed, ready to go. There isn't anything you need to do in the field. So when you deploy the meters, it's a simple meter exchange. Pull the old one out, plug in the new one, walk away. You don't need any special tools, no handhelds, no laptops, nothing. It's all automatic.
With the lockout feature from remote disconnect, is that, I'm assuming that would not replace if we were wanting to do like maintenance or work on the home. Is there like a lockout feature that locks it out, or how would that happen? Would we still have to go out on site and pull the meter if we're doing construction or those types of things, load side of that meter?
Yeah, it's constantly monitoring the load side, and so we can turn it off. You can turn it off from your laptop or from your phone if we set it up for you to do that, which I'm sure you'll want to. Or you can do it from a laptop, you know, while you're there at the premise. There's a number of different options for cutting the power on there, but we do monitor the load side even when the switch is open.
Okay.
Yep.
And maybe talk just real quick security protocol, you know, so no one else is doing that.
Okay. So the system was designed with security in mind from the very beginning. A lot of the other AMI networks out there, they were designed with security was bolted on as layers, and we didn't do it that way. So the Eaton network is extremely secure in that all the data is encrypted. We're using EAS 128-bit encryption on the meters. And then it's a frequency hopping spread spectrum radio, and we've taken the 902, 928 bands, and we split those up into 50 channels. And those are randomly rotating every communication session. And when they do that, every time they rotate, they also generate, they randomly generate communication session keys between each other. And once that communication session's done, those keys are tossed. So it's extremely robust. Now on the software end of it, getting access to a service disconnect meter would require the right security levels in the software to get there. Okay, that would be managed by IT, the system administrator. Ryan, you'd have access to that, and you would determine who would have access to being able to even see it on the screens. You know, if they don't have access to that functionality, it won't even appear on the software application.
What happens if the meter loses connection with the base station? How does it track? How does it keep record? How long will it store power, power data?
Okay, so it'll store at a minimum of 45 days of data, and that would include all the reading hourly, all the logs that are generated. So at least 45 days worth of data. Once it's connected, then the system will automatically backfill the data. So the system will go out and say, look, I'm missing this data from these time periods, and it'll request that data to come off the meter. So the meter is passing the data off to a collector, which is out in the field. I don't remember how many we had. 9. I think we had 9 collectors. Okay, so the data's routed into these collectors. So the collector will also maintain the data for 45 days of every meter that it's ever talked to. So you've got data redundancy throughout.
And does this come with upgrades, automatic upgrades? So if we would like, let's say you guys push an upgrade. So one that I know that's a little bit out there, but is out there, is let's say, maybe you can answer two loaded questions. The EMF, like if we were to this is something that utilities are having to deal with constantly is, let's say we were hit with an EMF event of some type,
Okay.
solar flare,
Yep.
something else, right? What is the capabilities for that? The second thing would be, if there is an upgrade, is this included in our package? Do we have to pay for upgrades along the way, or is that included in what we're paying?
Yeah, so software, firmware, all system updates are included in the maintenance price that we've quoted.
Okay.
And we generate 2 major system releases every year, and there may be subsequent, what would you call it? There may be some subsequent releases in between to deal with any issues that may arise. So all those are available to you as part of the maintenance contract. So when they come up, we don't automatically go out and upgrade you. We don't force you to upgrade. We may encourage you to, depending on what's in the software package, because there's always feature enhancements, performance enhancements, efficiency enhancements that come along with those updates. So we would notify you when those updates are available, and then schedule up a time when we would perform those updates, which we do remotely as well. It's all remote.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your EMF.
The EMF question's still there, but.
So maybe I didn't understand the EMF question.
Well, I think it's new, right? I guess as long as you're preparing for it, I don't know that I think it's an example, but I think it's something that we as a utility, and I think other utilities are faced with, and I think you'll start to see a lot more of what happens when, if this device was to get hit with an EMF, do your devices go out, those types of things. I'm assuming there's a warranty. And
Do you mean an EMP?
Yeah, exactly, like a solar flare.
Electromagnetic pulse or something?
Well, I'm talking like a solar flare, or, I think the concern right now is just the resiliency with, a nuclear bomb going over from North Korea. And, I think that's, it sounds crazy, but I can tell you.
No, people are talking about that.
It's
absolutely.
huge right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So if communications is disrupted, because EMF or EMP, the first thing it does is it impacts radio communications, right? The network, essentially, devices wouldn't be talking to each other anymore. They do restart if there's an event that they can't, not running properly, they'll restart at midnight. And they will automatically reestablish their communication links, because they maintain their communication links in flash memory. It's not in non-volatile memory. So as soon as they boot back up, they'll reestablish that exact same communication link, because they're looking at primary pathways. What is the most common pathway I use to get to a collector? And then they also have secondary backup alternate pathways. And they're looking at multiple gateways. So a meter will see multiple collectors. It's not automatic. It's not assigned to any one collector. The system is self-managed, self-routing, and self-healing. So if a part of it goes down, say a collector goes down, okay? If a collector goes down, the devices will look at their secondary routes and say, hey, where's the other gateway that's in my table? We call them neighbor tables, and it'll use that as its path to get the data back.
And when let's say that it isn't an outage event, does that meter stay in a normally closed position or a normally open position? So in other words, does my power at my house, if I'm having meter problems, is my power at my house interrupted?
It's normally closed.
Okay.
It's normally closed, so you would have power. There are certain events that will force it to go open and stay open. I'd have to look in the meter manual to tell you exactly what they were.
Okay.
But there are some conditions that would force it open to stay open.
Okay. I think that's all my questions.
I'm wondering about schedule at this point. Is there a plan for when we want to roll this out, or are we still in the decision mode, and is that still out ahead of us?
Well, we had a schedule when the RFP was finished, but we've kind of drawn it out for so long that I don't know what exactly the schedule would be. I'm hoping that once we go to council and that it gets approved, then we can start the process of purchasing server equipment and software and get the collector locations installed and running. So I suspect that it'll be kind of a 6 or 7 month process to just get that equipment in place. Is that too far off? The 6 month process for collectors to be installed and things?
That's totally reasonable. On these projects, if I showed you a project plan, it looks kind of complicated, but we handle all that. We make the load as light as we possibly can for you. So yeah, it's getting in servers. I mean, the first thing we'd have is a kickoff meeting to talk about, what's going to happen, how are the meters going to be programmed, because we're going to deliver them pre-programmed. And so we go through all these system parameters. How's the system going to behave for what you're looking for? Do I want hourly data out of residential and 15-minute data out of commercials? And, how often do I want that data to come into the system? All those types of things are figured out. Things about load limiting and the disconnect switches, we talk about that because those are configurable. Where do we want to set those? So those are all done in the kickoff meeting is really important. And from there, we take a kind of a generic project plan and we blow that out into a full-blown project plan, which includes delivery date on all the equipment. So the next steps would be, yes, getting your servers in. We put the software on the servers. We can actually do that remote. And then getting the gateways installed, because we want to put up all the collectors and then get the backhaul communications working, and that's easily done within 6 months. The rest of it is the meters, and meters is the easy part because it's just pull out the old one, plug in a new one. So common approaches, like for example, Provo, they're doing it by route. They went ahead and decided to do the whole thing. They were talking about doing it in a couple of year stages, and they decided to roll the whole thing out for 36,000, well, it's 38,000 meters. So they did it by route. They just went route by route by route. And once the collectors were up, then it doesn't matter where you put them in. So for example, if they had a meter fail, an old drive-by meter, which they had the Itron drive-by system over there, they would just pull that out and then put in a new AMI meter and have them come up and find the network because the collectors are there.
Yeah, I think we'd like to have the whole system replaced within 2 years once we start.
I guess question on billing. Are we looking to implement, would we want to implement this as a phased approach? I know we talked about that. Or would we say, essentially 3 years, let's say we take this year and next year to deploy. Would be looking at time of use, say, 2020, or would you want to change, when the meter comes out, do you put people on a new rate schedule, or how would you suggest doing that, I guess?
We talked about that before, and I thought we decided that you'd have to have everyone on, everybody ready and do it all at one time.
Okay, just making sure.
That said, I think it would be beneficial to be calculating what that bill is as we go, just so we don't have a surprise on day one, but because over time you'll have more and more customers on there, and hopefully we're getting our billing system ready to do that. And so you're really calculating two bills as more and more people have that capability. And then there's no surprise when you're ready to go live with a new billing structure and flip the switch, so.
So I guess on that, maybe just so that we're tracking, is this year we're setting the back end up, and then it would be nice to start, next year really educating the first of the year, those sample bills like we talked about. Was that seem like
Yeah,
a fair?
I would think as soon as the information is being collected, you could start right away, okay, how does this impact the bill? Is it working the way we expect? And not have any surprises as far as billing is concerned.
Nobody wants a $15,000.
Any other questions on AMI? Anything else here?
Now, maybe just a related question. We talked about, Jordan, we talked about adding some extra costs to the rate structure, so those would be captured over time. Our new rates, remind me, are those already including a few $1 million for all this? So this is already going to be funded automatically?
Yeah, we assumed.
Like $5 million,
I think it was 1.5 million or so. I'd have to check the
Oh,
model to
okay.
make sure, but we.
1.6, I believe, is what we had on
1.6 was in the model, and we had spread that over 3 or 5 years, so it wasn't going to all hit at once. But
Right.
yeah, we included that.
Okay, so this, this big chunk of money, it's already going to be captured in our rates that are effective this month.
Yeah.
So,
And are we doing a bond for that? Is that how we would pay for this? Okay. Okay.
We do have some cash reserve as well, right? We do have cash reserve as well. Yeah. One thing I was, oh, sorry, Ryan.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna make some commentary. We always start the meeting with kind of our mission statement. And so as I've been thinking about, whether or not this would be a prudent decision, I think about safety and reliability and customer service. And are those all the main points? Yeah, I think so. And I think, as I think through all those things, that there are pretty significant benefits. Just hearing some that Ryan highlighted today, and especially when it comes to reliability, I think that's fresh on everyone's minds here in Kaysville. And the fact that you can see everywhere in your city if there's a problem immediately and be able to respond to that, I think that kind of has a trickle-down effect in impacting not only reliability, but safety and customer service as well. And I think the billing obviously lends to customer service. And so that's kind of, I'm approaching it short-term, how does it impact us immediately? But then I think also in long-term, we've had a lot of discussions and presentations about how much smarter the grid is getting and the customer's relationship with the grid and putting power on and off and batteries and things that in 20 years are coming. And I just think you want to keep up and be proactive and prepare for that. And I think having this information is a huge step towards being prepared for the future and being able to provide service reliably with all those things. So I just wanted to, I guess that's my observation.
Yeah.
I would just say also, not that meter doesn't have to go all the way off either. You set parameters on the voltage too, so we're gonna find connection problems and things that people don't even have any idea. So we'll be proactive in that way, to prevent future outages.
Yeah. Another question I had, is there any salvage value in the meters that we'd be taking off the homes? And
It's a good question, and it's not something that we've investigated at this point in time.
so it's not built into this price. It's not like Eaton's taking those or anything. It's just we'll have a lot of meters to do something with. And
I've heard of other agencies selling their meters, but I don't know what that entails.
And I assume we're retiring meters every year as they, as their service life expires.
If the ERT goes bad or whatever on the residentials, then they're replaced.
So there's a certain amount of, we see the price here, but I'm just thinking there's some potential savings and salvage that maybe we're not seeing as well.
We could collect them all and put them in a box and put them on the public auction and see
who
what
wants those.
happens. I'm sure they'll get sold.
Yeah. When we replace a meter currently with a new meter, do we know what the cost is compared to replacing it with a smart meter and AMI meter?
Nobody would.
So I guess today's current price for an AMR versus what we're doing with an AMI?
It's around $100 now, isn't it, for the AMR ones?
Around 100?
Yeah.
And you estimated it as, or you're
125.
averaging it out to 125, so it's,
What was the average failure rate on meters? Do you know what the, just kind of percentage of the? For seeing that once.
Yeah, I have to pull it up, I can't remember this.
Okay.
It's pretty low.
And what is the warranty period on the meters? Remind me what you guys told us.
It's 1 year.
1 year.
1 year from, sorry, 1 year from purchase or install?
We do it from when it's delivered to your dock.
Purchase. Yeah.
What's the life expectancy on those?
The system's designed for 20 years. Some of the meters, service disconnect switch ones might be a little less, 15 years. I'd have to look on which one to see what it is, but the system's designed for 20-year life.
On these new electronic meters, it depends on which way they're facing also. They don't like to face south or the sun all the time either.
Question about the customer web portal. What type of parameters are available for the customer? I obviously they would see kilowatt hours, but would they be able to see real-time watts being drawn?
Yeah, that and a lot more. I have some slides about that. If you're interested, I can thumb through them real quick. Or I can send you the slideshow either way. But there's a lot of information that the customer portal delivers to the customer. And incidentally, when we talked to Provo and Idaho Falls, the percentage of the take rate for using the public portal was in the single digits, percentage-wise. So there was a very, very small fraction of people using the portal. And whether that's just, lack of advertising or whatnot, but that's two cities that have, expressed that concern to us. And that's one of the reasons why, in the beginning I've omitted that, because it's a very large cost for a very small usage and benefit.
That was one of the biggest aha moments for me is I actually purchased my own monitoring equipment, which was 3 times more than one of these meters costs, and just to monitor my own home and being able to see in real time the amount of power that you're using. And you pull it up on your phone, everyone's in bed, the lights are all supposed to be off, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm drawing this much.
Yeah.
And everyone, what's still running? What's leaking?
There's a lot of products out there that will do that. There's Census. I have a Nurio on my own home, and they all kind of give you that kind of insight into what you're pulling out of your house as far as, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's just a decision the city has to make. Whether or not we want to provide that tool or if it's something that you buy from third party.
I think that just having that knowledge available to the customer, if they want to make their home more efficient, they have that available right there. And there's some major energy conservation measures available with that information. So,
can I ask, when that data comes and sits in a server, who owns it? Can we use it? You just mentioned a third party. So
yeah, so the data itself, the system that we're talking about purchasing is there's 2 options. You can have a hosted system where they have the server and all the data goes to their servers. They manage it in their data center. It's a little bit more expensive, and what this cost is for we host the data, we host the servers. So we have all the data in-house. It belongs to us on our SQL server.
And so that gives us the flexibility in the future to look at options for customer interfaces.
Oh yeah, owning the data makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
So when you have control of it, it makes a lot of sense. I have experiences from other departments that aren't doing that, and we've run into issues where we wanted a specific query or whatever from the data, and it's a nightmare to get that from them. So I would prefer to have this kind of thing in-house. I think we have a lot more control, and we can do other things with it. You know, the portal is one of the things that can be, I mean, it can be offloaded to a third-party portal, so you could have, I mean, it doesn't have to be Eaton portal, it can be another vendor's portal, and that's not something that we've looked at.
I just think it's interesting how big of a role the interface actually plays. So I just got one of these smart thermostats on my house, and it gives me a little green leaf that tells me when I'm being efficient, and I can see it on my phone. And I think if I had to log into a website and remember a new ID and a new password and go check it, I probably wouldn't ever check it. But the fact that it's just there on my phone, and when I walk by my thermostat, I see it. So I just think those participation rates may vary based on what the user interface looks like, and if we have the flexibility to look at different options, it's just intriguing down the road what kind of possibilities you could have with that. So,
You know, with a lot of data comes great responsibility too. An example of this, I can look at mine and my usage and go, oh, it looks like my wife is making cookies. It looks like she made 5 batches of cookies, yet I come home and there's only 2 batches on the counter, where the other 3 batches, you know, you got to be really responsible and not be an evil dictator with this stuff. It's a warning to anyone who uses the web portal.
Okay, any last questions on AMI before we segue into
I just have
fiber?
one request. So I request that we are looking for a recommendation from the Power Commission to the council to move the AMI Eaton system to an action item. So we're looking for your recommendation to the council.
I guess it brings up one question for me. I'm curious about Gary and Bruce and you also, as far as you guys feel like we're ready for that. I'd just like to hear if you can.
Yes, we've been hoping and working towards this for the last 3 years, so.
Yeah, and as far as the IT goes, we're ready to go. We have servers in place that will house this in a virtual environment. We've been proactively purchasing data storage, so we are ready to go. We want to move forward on this as quickly as we can.
I have great confidence in these guys, and I mean, appreciate the information that's been provided tonight, and I propose that we recommend to the city council that it move forward as an action item. Is that what you're requesting?
Yes, that's correct.
So I propose that we do that.
And can I have a second?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks for all your
Okay,
work.
thank you, appreciate it. So let's move into your next presentation on the fiber optics.
Okay, so another history, Kaysville City IT history here. When I very first started in 2002 with the city, I worked, my position was the GIS administrator. I did all the data, GIS mapping. And in order for me to get data from one computer to another, I had to copy it to a floppy drive and move it over to another computer, and that's essentially was our network. And over the course of the years, we upgraded from a sneaker net to a 900 megahertz radio that was 512K, and that connected all of our buildings. And And so we was able to move files back and forth that way. And later, we upgraded to a 10 gigabit fiber connection between all the city buildings. So we installed fiber at the time. I think that was back in 2005 or 6. And we partnered with Davis County, and they paid for half of the fiber run that went from this block to the emission center that's down on 650 West. Yeah. And so they paid for half of that. We installed 48 strands between here and there, and they paid for 24, and we have 24. So that agreement exists today, and we have fiber between the operations center, the fire station, police station, recreation center in here. And then over the course of the years, we've upgraded from a 10 meg connection to a 100 meg to a gig connection, and now we're at a 10 gig connection between each of the buildings. So that's pretty good. Actually, that's not true. It's 1 gig between each of the buildings, except for the PD and the operations center has a 10 gig connection for our backups that we host there at the operations center. So over the last 12 years, we've had fiber in the city. We've been utilizing that between our buildings. When we put in fiber, we cut all the internet connections that we had at every building, and we brought it into one central location, and we served out internet from one single location. We saved quite a bit of money doing it that way. And over the course of the years, we've never had a break. We've never had to do like a repair on that fiber. It's just been rock solid and worked the whole time. So we've had it quite a few years, and it's been great. Now we're talking about extending this fiber optic network to our substations, where we have some current needs, and some of those needs are AMI system, which we just talked about. And we would like to bring AMI to the we'd like to bring fiber to the substations to help support AMI. That fiber isn't going to cover all of our nodes that we have that will need the 9 collector locations, but it will cover at least 4 of them. And then we'll have some collector nodes probably at other buildings here in town. So we'll have a significant number of nodes that will be covered by fiber if we do this project. We also have needs for security. We would like to put access control at the substations so that Gary can keep track of who's going in and out. And currently we have video surveillance at those substations. We use a 2.4 gigahertz radios to collect those IP video feeds. So right now we do have data at those substations currently for the video feeds, but it's pretty limited to just what we have. There's not much more capacity that we could pull out of those wireless connections. We also have meters, UAMPS meters at each one of the substations that collects data from those sites, and so we have a need there, and we really feel like if we, adding fiber will make the power department a little bit more efficient. We'll be able to bring access points down there for employee use and a number of other things. So that's what we need right now. We need fiber at the substations in support of these elements. As we run fiber, we're hoping that we can get a lot more benefit from that fiber than just running fiber to the substations. But we hope to connect the parks that we pass with this fiber, and possibly even run it to tank sites and the cemetery as a part of future projects, but not necessarily this one. But I just wanted to kind of convey that we have lots of data needs all through the city, and that's kind of where we'd like to go. So as we started looking at this fiber optic project and what we actually needed to accomplish, we had a couple goals in mind. We wanted to minimize our cost, similar to the way we did it in the beginning with sharing costs with Davis County. We wanted to own our own fiber. We wanted to provide other benefits in a number of different ways, and like the ones I just listed with the park connections and cemetery. We wanted to find someone to help us operate, maintain, and repair, provide location services for the fiber. And that's one thing that we haven't done with the existing fiber, is we've never hired a contractor to maintain it. If we had a break, I wouldn't even know who to call at this point in time to come in and fix it. So it would probably be not a very quick fix, in other words. So we need a operator, maintainer to help us maintain that fiber. It's not something that we can do in-house, and so we need to do that. We'd like to improve our service, our internet services. So that's kind of what we want to accomplish. So our approach was we started developing an RFP. We reached out to B&A Engineering and had them draft a fiber optic project. They put together drawings and plans and a spec, and they drafted an RFP for us. Now that RFP was specifically for just an installation of fiber point to point from the city buildings to the substations, and that was it. And then later, after we started looking at this, we realized that we needed somebody to help maintain that fiber because the power department doesn't have resources to maintain that or the skills to do it at this point in time. So we needed to have somebody help us maintain that. So we revised our RFP and so that it included a little bit broader spectrum, and then we sent that RFP out to internet service providers. When we received the RFP back, the RFP was written in a way that it was very, very open as far as the way that what they could, propose to us, and we got some very interesting proposals back. The proposals all came with a quote to install fiber, and then additions to that. And we sat down with, at some point in time or another, we sat down with the vendors that provided proposals, and we interviewed them. There was only one that was really willing to negotiate in a way that met our goal criteria, and so that's the one that we've kind of like pursued conversations with. We're in the process of writing a contract that would the contract will spell out a couple different things, and we don't have that contract available yet. But the contract will be broken up into three categories. There'll be three actual separate contracts. There'll be an IRU, which is an irrefutable right of use contract. There will be an O&M contract, and there will be a build contract with that. And so so we haven't gotten, we're hoping to have the contract finished this week so that we can take it to council. Yeah. Yeah, if you would, that would be great.
I'll jump in just for a minute. I'm not sure I can add anything that Ryan hasn't said, but as we looked at this project, I think the important thing for us is first and foremost, this is a fiber optic project related to the power department to connect our substations. As this has kind of evolved, we think there may be some value in maybe extending this in a couple of ways. I think as we looked at it, we thought, if we're going to invest this money, how can we maybe leverage our investment and maybe get a return on our investment a little bit? So what we're kicking around now, we'd like to get your input on this, is to, as Ryan mentioned, there are three different agreements as we look at this. There would be an agreement to install the fiber ring. There would be an agreement to maintain the fiber ring in exchange for use of some of those fiber strands. And then there also would be a right of use agreement for other vendors that might come in, other providers that might come in and want to use that fiber. We could lease that fiber to other providers. This by no means is a fiber to home project. We don't want to advertise it as such, but we think it's a power department project, but we think we can leverage our investment by allowing others to use those strands to cover our O&M cost, and then potentially use those strands to bring some lease revenue back into the city.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at this as, for example, if we were to reach out with the Central Davis Sewer District, with this model, we could lease them 2 strands of fiber so that they could connect from one side of the city to a lift station and utilize that fiber. So they would help offset the cost of the installation of this fiber using it that way. And let me just so here we have the ring as we've designed it. You see that there's I mean, it's a purple line. It basically goes down Main Street, or down the city block to Main Street to 50 West to Burton, and Burton to Sunset to Smith to Angel, where it goes up to 200 North and then goes down to Schick Lane substation. So it would pick up the Burton Lane substation there, and then it would pick up the Schick Lane substation, and then go to the east sub, or this is the west sub, and then up to the east sub, and then back to City Hall. So it would be that complete ring. We would put in switches that would talk in one direction clockwise probably, and then if it was broken, it would go the other direction. So if the ring was broken, so we would maintain constant communications. You see these little squares up here. Those are handholds that we would drop down for future use and future connections.
So is this all underground?
So this is not all underground. A good portion of it is above ground. Let me just go to a slide. This is yeah, so it's just the dotted lines, but essentially what it is you have, I have it on this slide, there is 38,563 feet of overhead fiber optics, and then there's 10,776 feet of underground fiber. So that is that's essentially the ring that we're proposing to put in.
What's the total cost on this?
So we got four proposals, and they ranged in price, but $433,000 is our preferred vendor's cost. So
Are we doing any terminations inside of substations?
We are, yes. There'll be a termination in each one of the substations where we'll connect to switches.
How do you control or limit other vendors having access to those?
So we will limit access by only allowing other vendors to use the allotted buffer tubes. So they will not be able to use the strands that KaysvilleCity uses for connection.
But if the whole fiber terminates in the sub, what if another vendor has a problem with
So Eddie,
termination?
if you look at the map, each one of these blocks, little dots, is a handhold. And so you'll be able to break out the fiber at each of these locations. But KaysvilleCity would keep a buffer tube for themselves. We would keep it for ourselves for our own purposes and use.
Okay, if you have 48 fibers terminating in a substation and you have
Well,
6
I'm
or
sorry,
10 or
yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, it wouldn't be 48 fibers terminating a substation. It'd be 12 fibers terminating a substation.
It's a 12 fiber loop all the way around?
Yes, yeah.
No,
Total?
no. It's probably a 48 fiber, but the only tubes that are gonna go into the substation is out of the 4 main nodes of the ADSS. 1 will be dedicated to KaysvilleCity. The other 3 can be wielded off to whomever, be it the water department or another entity moves in or somebody like that. So there is no cross communication. One of those.
That's correct. Thank you,
Correct me
Patrick.
if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're good.
That's the time I'm reading it. Only one of those will be dedicated to KaysvilleCity and KaysvilleCity only. There will be no cross.
I understand that, but what about all the other fibers going into a substation for a termination?
So those will be dark fiber, and they won't be lit. So they won't be lit by KaysvilleCity.
But if you lease any out, and once you lease to one company, you're open to the world. Anyone who comes in wanting it, you cannot tell them no.
Right.
So,
I think I can answer his question.
Go ahead.
As Ryan indicated, those boxes are pull boxes, so they'll come in and out. All 48 fibers will not go in the sub. So from what I understand, those boxes, they'll only take 12 that's dedicated to us into the sub. The remaining will stay outside the sub perimeter. Does that answer your question?
yeah, as long as you keep them all out, the main cable outside.
Right.
If you're terminating inside the sub, you can't give any other vendor access to that.
Right.
That makes sense, yeah. And we would keep the integrity of the security of that substation intact as we do this project.
The way I understood it when we met with the contractor fiber provider, that's what I understood. That all the dark fiber or fiber that's not being used will not go into the sub, just ours that's dedicated to KaysvilleCity.
So you'll have a splice point that is outside of the
Yeah, and you can see if
substation.
you look at the, I don't know if I can zoom in on this, but, nope, I can't. But yeah, so there's a box here and the substation's here. So there's a splice point here, and that's where it would break off from the street and come into the substation. And every one of these are exactly the same. There's a splice box and then a termination into the substation. So, yeah, the substation. All we need is 2 strands for fiber to make that connection. So 2 strands will cover the connection of this substation. The rest of the 12 will be utilized for other purposes, other city purposes. So,
You don't have a SCADA system yet, do you?
No.
Are you planning to install a SCADA system?
so with the AMI, you'll have a lot of SCADA capability and tools that will allow you to bring in SCADA-like information.
Okay. Have you talked with other utilities that have done this, other cities?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, when we looked at the AMI system at Provo, they had a pretty huge system actually, but theirs was developed and then sent to or sold to Google, and then when I think they ended up having to rebuild their fiber optic network in order to make it work. So.
But are you talking to other power departments or cities that have mixed their fiber use with outside companies using the same fiber?
So I'm not understanding the concern that you have really. Is it, I guess because I'm seeing this from a data guy's perspective, and there's all kinds of security protocols that we're putting in place. Even if there was fiber that looped into the system, if it's not lit or then there's nothing there to capture. You can't really. There's no real security risks unless you're talking about capturing somebody's data from a switch or something like that. I guess I'm having a hard time.
Well, I know with some of the relaying and system protection systems that go in with SCADA, these switches slow down the communication and can create a problem for your SCADA system.
Yeah, what we'll do is, my intent is to keep the power department's AMI system entirely on a different network. So it would be isolated from the rest of the city's network. And we would do that just so that we meet some of the requirements that the power department has. And I don't know, I know that you have agencies that control like what kind of security protocols you can use, and we would follow those guidelines as we develop this.
That's my concern, is just make sure we don't give something up. I mean, we're talking less than $500,000. And if we get through and it doesn't do what we want it to do because we've let other people into it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
A $500,000 investment, if it'll do what we need it to do, is a reasonable investment.
Oh, yeah.
Without trying to make money on the side off of it.
Yeah.
Let's make sure it works for us before we worry about sharing it with
I
the
see
world.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Ryan, do you have a cut sheet on the cable? You probably don't, do you? It's probably written out in the spec.
I don't have a cut sheet on the cable. But I think it is written out in the spec. It was a part of the spec that I sent you.
I'm pretty sure, and Alan, just by looking at the cable, they can segregate those 12 fiber to where you could never get into them, even at the splice points. So you'll have 4 tubes. One will hold 12 fiber that the city nobody but the city will use, no one. And then there'll be 3 spare, because while you're putting it up, you might as well, I mean, you could go just 12 fiber and make the loop and have no spare, but the cost difference between doing that and 48 fiber is pennies. So you might as well put the 48 up with the idea of expansion, so we don't have to go through this again when something else comes down the road, and I don't know what that is. But one tube would remain completely isolated from the other 3. And actually, the other 3 will be isolated from the others as well. You could say, okay, these 12 are the 12 we're going to share, and that's it. Once that's maxed, if somebody else wants to come in, they're going to be stringing fiber on their own. They won't use our termination points or anything. That's how I'm viewing it.
Yes, that's how I'm viewing it also.
All right.
If I can move on, I did provide a fiber breakdown. One of the council members asked a question that I didn't know, and so I did break it down. We have so this is kind of a breakdown of the costs. Essentially, you have aerial construction, and there's your cost, $134,000. $100,000, and then your underground cost is $150,000 roughly. And then all your other labor and materials is at $140,000. I thought this was interesting as we looked at this. We're talking about 48 strands, but the sweet spot is actually 60 strands. So it's one extra buffer tube. The additional cost is only like $2,400. So we'll have to investigate this as we get closer to this project. But the overall cost for installation is $649 roughly, so $649 a foot essentially for overhead, and then $1,699 for underground. So that's kind of where we're at there. And then, do you have any questions on that?
On the underground, are you installing conduit for this, or is the conduit already in place?
So the underground, in one case that I know, there is conduit, but in most cases there is not conduit. UDOT has a conduit that may be available to us from from the east side of I-15 to 900 West, and that would be a part of this project. That we would acquire rights to use that. That's pretty significant, actually. So they also have another conduit that would be available to us, that it's more down Burton Lane. I can show you where that is on the map. So right here, there's a crossing, and there's a conduit from one side of the freeway to the other, but we would have to come under or over the railroad tracks. So these are all permitting issues that we will have to deal with as we go along, but it shouldn't impact the actual connectivity, because as we start running cable, we'll be able to run it around all the way to Burton Lane and make a connection with fiber. And then if we have to spend a little bit extra time with permitting on getting under the railroad, then we will have that flexibility to make that termination from one side of the freeway to the other.
Are all the other easements, right-of-ways all in place, minus those two that you have to?
Yeah, there's, obviously all the poles are owned by Kaysville the easements in Kaysville. We don't have a franchise agreement we have to pay, so we're working with the power department who owns the poles. So there's really not much that we have to tackle. It's just the two biggest areas that we have to kind of cross is this crossing between I-15 and 900 West. And then this crossing down on the south side. Let's see, the south side from, on Burton Lane.
And my only suggestion on that would be is if for some reason you end up boring through there or something, I would strongly suggest that, spare conduits in that. If we have to go through that hassle, it's a long process through the railroad and those types of things. Spares are cheap. Throw it in there. Trust me, it's worth it.
Yeah, this conduit both of these conduits. So those are the two conduits that are in place that could be provided by somebody else. I'm aware that we have a conduit here for this roundabout that's being built, and then there's going to be some underground here that we're going to have to construct. But that's in the bid, so that's a part of their contract. And there's also some other areas that are going to require underground in this area. And right here in this area where it crosses the Ponds Park area. So there's 8,000 feet somewhere in there that's going to be underground.
My other question would be: is there any other power needs if you're looking to go through, when we had that outage here, if you're looking to go through there, if there was a way to go underground? I know that's 46 kV, so maybe that doesn't make sense, but are there any other projects that we should be looking at, long-term planning for adding conduit in here for, you know, the power side of things.
So it's my understanding that you guys are wanting to use the utility poles that we already have up. So obviously, the east side of Kaysville, we have our right-of-ways everywhere we want to go, right? So it's only the west side of Kaysville, the newer part that went underground, where we're going to have those issues of going underground.
We still have right-of-ways and easements on the underground.
Right, but that's where you would go underground, is the west side, because everything
Right.
else is going to be above.
Other
right?
than those two,
Yeah, those-
couple locations where we're already underground, which we already have a utility easement through there.
Right.
The only concerns that we need to review is when we set these pole boxes, make sure the boxes are set in our right-of-ways, not on people's property. And make sure we have the right-of-way, big enough right-of-ways or big enough easements to set the boxes.
I don't know.
Yeah, they're the big ones.
Oh, that's right. You asked that question, didn't you? Okay.
On the budget, have we budgeted for this? I don't remember seeing that in the numbers. Okay,
So
Were you
then-
talking about the revenue requirement model that?
that's right,
I
yeah,
did.
in your model.
Yeah, I think we had anticipated both the fiber and the AMI when we talked about it, but I can't remember the specific amount that I had included in there, so I'd have to double check.
It seems like we were,
Yeah,
Okay.
seems like at the time we were looking at that, we were thinking fiber was gonna be like 800,000. So I,
yeah, I may
think
be
I'm
able to
at the
pull
if
it
it
up and
isn't,
check.
yeah, let's pull it up. I'm thinking we might have this covered.
Here you go.
Okay, so,
This might be an old version, but.
yeah, it wouldn't have changed much.
Small window.
Maybe while we're looking at this, what would the schedule of installation be?
So, so hopefully we're looking for a potential award in January. Was that February? Maybe I have that wrong. The next meeting that can go to council is February 1st. So we're looking for a potential award in February. And then, let's see. I may have this all backwards. So potential award in February. We'll have to do some permitting for the crossings, but that can all be done while the rest of the backbone's completed, and we're hoping to do that by May or June. So this might be pushed out a little bit depending on permitting. I understand the railroad takes a bit of time.
Probably 4 to 6 months would be my guess on their
Yeah.
timeline.
So we had some capital set aside for substation upgrades and then substation reclosers called out specifically, and then we had the 1.6 million for the AMI, so that's what we had included.
You had how much for the AMI?
1.6.
1.6.
So I'm not sure where the 500,000 and the 1.5 million were anticipated to go, if that may have been included in there or not, or maybe that's a separate project, but that's what we had included.
Is that, I guess, is that 1.5, is that for this, or is that for, so you have 500 for the reclosers, and then there was another 1.5, so that'd leave $1 million left in the substations, does that seem accurate?
Just for a reminder, that came from,
Okay,
That's right, because I think we needed more cash reserves.
that's
So we
right.
threw in an extra
You're right. You're right.
1.5 million.
That's right.
So with AMI, and I know I'm backtracking a little bit, but with AMI and with this fiber, do we have enough capital funds to fund this? Are we looking to bond one of them, or? Okay, so we're not looking to borrow any money, it's just, I gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Okay. And then just to catch you guys up, sorry, this is the potential timeline, is looking for going to city council 1st of February, and then go through permitting. We think that there's a potential delay with railroads, we have to look at that. But if everything was to go through, you're thinking minus railroad a month approximately for permitting. And so this is probably really a June, July timeframe, plus or minus the railroad delay. Okay. Any other questions on the fiber optics from us here?
So just real quick, just to clarify on this timeline, the timeline, is that gonna be for all 3 parts of your RFP? So there was a maintenance agreement, there's the right of usage agreement, and then there's the installation. Or is this timeline just for installation?
This is just for installation.
Okay, all right, so there'll still be 2 other segments.
Yeah, I suspect that, I mean, the build and the O&M would happen fairly close together.
Well, and they were, all 3 aspects were actually in the bids.
Yes, they were.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just we'll have them separated as a city, just in case we go with brand X fails for whatever reason, they go debunked or they lose interest or whatever, then the city has the option to say, okay, we need to find somebody else. We're not locked into something.
You're exactly right.
And who is it you're recommending to go with?
So we're recommending the company Connext.
If we go back to that, they were, if I remember right, they were 3rd listed at 433,000.
Yeah, let's see if I can.
I mean, they weren't the least expensive, but they were the ones most willing to actually try and help us as a city.
Yes, they were the ones that were willing to negotiate.
Because I know Utopia will not, they'll want to own their line.
Yeah.
They'll want to lease it back to us. They'll put it in our city, but they want to own it.
Yeah, I can't figure out how to get it over there. There it is. Let's see, maybe.
Just from what I know about Utopia, I don't know the others.
I don't know what's going on here.
And maybe a little bit of background on that company. I'm not familiar with them. I'm assuming that there's a pre-qualification package that you made them submit, history, company of the history, those types of things. I'm assuming that we have all that.
So Connext has been around for quite a while. They're actually a wireless service provider, wireless internet service provider, and they're breaking into fiber right now. They're installing a project in Roy right now. So,
Have they done anything with us? I mean,
No.
did they? Okay, so they're not the ones that did the initial fiber.
no, the initial fiber, the existing fiber was done by Cache Valley Electric. Yeah.
How many projects have they done in the past on fiber completed?
I don't know that. They've done 2. There you go.
Okay. And then will we pull a bid bond from them? I mean, how revenue-wise, how large of a company is this? I mean, can they handle $500,000 worth of work? Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know they're here, so I can ask.
Okay.
Bid bond and construction bond both.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
City,
Okay.
they wouldn't expose
Yeah.
themselves to that kind of risk.
We are looking for a recommendation from the Power Commission to council to move the fiber optic project to an action item.
I make a motion to move the fiber optic project to an action item.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate your time. Appreciate all your guys' hard work. I know that there's a lot of history there, and definitely appreciate everything you're doing for that. So,
Thank you.
okay.
You know, I have just one question. I know that we've moved that, but I want to ask this question. So we get this up and rolling, and everything's working fine, and we have our securities in place, and Brand X comes in and wants to lease some of our fiber. Where do those funds end up at the end of the day?
I don't know.
I mean, if this is a power department project, so then would come back to the power department. Okay. See, now you're paying for your AMI. On some
I don't think you're gonna make that much off of it. It's gonna be more headache than it's worth.
You want that?
Okay, so let's move in. So the next item on the agenda is the net metering agreement questions. So I wanted to leave this pretty open. And just, I know everyone's received questions as far as from a customer, from any of our customers. And I just want to make sure that the answers we send out are the same. And so just talking through with a few different people, I think it'd be beneficial to list a Q&A session of, you know, what the questions we were and then what the answer is, and then just make sure, you know, we can direct customers to that location. So I know Jordan had some questions, John had some questions, so I think if we could just go through them. Again, this is kind of all-encompassing on questions from customers, also on the net metering agreement, and then I'd also like to go through the net metering agreement for grandfathering, make sure that we're on the same page with that, and then leave a little time for Jordan to talk through commercial net metering, and that's what I have kind of for the agenda for that whole one line item. So is there anything else that we wanted specifically as we go through all of those?
No, just mostly address the commercial net metering, you know, or
Okay.
feed-in tariff, whatever we do.
Okay, perfect. So John, did you want to start with questions? I have this, if this is what you're looking for. This is the email you sent.
Yeah, here, I'll just, I'll that'll work. Okay, so there was a couple of questions that I just wanted to get confirmation that this is what we what we intended with what we presented to the city council.
You can zoom that in too.
See, first question, oh, it does that, huh? Cool. Okay, so talking about net metering agreement, say when a customer is grandfathered, so existing customers with solar, if they add to their system, do they keep their grandfathering? That was the first part of that. And another side question to that was, if they sell their home, does the grandfathering go with the sale of the home, or does it go away because it's a new customer? And I believe we decided, well, let's just talk
Yes.
about those.
So question one, I guess, is so that we get that one, and then I'd like us to get the answer, and then if it's possible, let's post a Q&A on the website, questions that we've received. Does that seem doable?
Yeah, if somebody,
So
are you getting all the stuff down, Stacy? As long as we have it all compiled.
Okay, perfect. So question one, so that I understand, is if you're grandfathered, you want to expand your system, do you lose grandfathering or do you not lose grandfathering? Is that accurate?
Correct.
I think if you change your system, you now fall under the new rules. That's my opinion on it.
But when we discussed this, because I was under the same thing as Alan, but when we discussed this, if they have an array already and they add to the array, they already have a net metering agreement because they already have an array. They're just adding to it.
Do they have to sign a new agreement to add to it?
Yeah, maybe that's the question. What have we
We
done?
have before because they have to tell us what system size they have, what their
Exactly.
inverters, all that
It's
stuff.
got
So
to
it
be
has been.
inspected again, the whole bit. As far as I'm concerned, it's a new
So it's a
system.
new system.
That's
So-
my opinion.
So as a homeowner that's grandfathered, that wants to, be honest with the city, they could lose their grandfathering if they get a permit. What would stop them from just throwing up a couple more panels and nobody knows? Which would then could
Sure, there's
potentially
people doing it all
cause.
the time right now, so.
So I would want people to, let's not penalize them for being honest. Let's allow them. Well, actually, another question would be, how many people are grandfathered? Was there very many that
Yeah.
came in at the last minute?
Well,
That
what
came
was-
in
yeah.
in that 2-week period, we got 55 signed net meter
55
agreements.
sign in.
Okay, but we said 500, so.
Yeah, luckily not, but it felt like 500, I'll tell you
Yeah, I
that.
can imagine. But, so 55,
With all the
okay.
calls and everything else, it felt like 500 or more.
Okay. So
That's
we're,
a 35-40% increase in a matter of 2 weeks.
Yeah, when you talk about, yeah,
It's
exactly.
a pretty big increase.
so assuming they all follow through with it, which chances are some of them are gonna drop off. They're gonna decide not to do it. But, we could have 230 grandfathered customers, something like that. So it's not a huge number. So I think it doesn't really change the revenue numbers that much, I think, either way. Either way we go, it's not gonna change the revenue numbers. And the only reason someone was gonna wanna add to a system is maybe they get an electric car, or they do something and their energy consumption has gone up, and so they wanna add to their system to keep the usage down. So I don't really see it as a revenue killer either way. I think, I'm leaning towards, let's limit the systems. We still need to define the max system size, but we should limit it. You can add to your array, but don't exceed this value that we come up with.
Also, I guess you could always set a size, say anything over 1 kW, you'd have to, that would initiate a
okay,
new
so-
agreement or something, whatever is
Yeah.
reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
A few panels, like you said, wouldn't be a big deal, but if you're gonna go more than 1 kW or something,
Yeah.
I think I lean towards what John explained, and I think the impact is pretty low. A lot of these customers have already kind of designed the arrays on their homes with the space in mind, and you're kind of physically limited on your home. And so the scope we're talking about, I don't know if there's a lot more out there that customers would add. And in addition to that, a lot of the incentive has to do with these tax rebates that are gone most of these customers, I assume, have received the $7,500 from the government. So if there's additional panels coming on, they won't be receiving that perk
They
as well.
would still get the federal one, actually, you can get it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
The
realize
state-
that.
The state one is a one-time
That's
only.
a good deal.
But the federal one is a 30%
For all-
tax credit. So
Oh,
you
okay.
add to it, you get 30% off of that one.
But the state is one time.
Correct.
Okay, so I had that wrong. But I just don't see the scope being large enough to have a concern, and I agree that we need to identify the max system size, and then it's as long as it's within that threshold. I don't think that those customers should be basically losing their net metering agreement on all of their array just for the sake of adding a small portion in addition to what they had.
But that does throw a little wrench in the works with, they would then have to, if they would have to sign a new net metering agreement by adding another one.
I guess you could amend the old one.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
could pull the old
Just
net
change the
metering
size of it,
agreement
yeah.
and just change the size of it. And
I think to that question is how do we track? We have 200 customers today that are on grandfathered status. How do we track that? Maybe walk us through that process.
You know, we're gonna have to figure it out. They'll be on, well, in the billing system, they'll be on, they have their numbers in a certain category, so they would be all the old ones. So,
Okay, so you know exactly everybody that's on there. Okay, okay. Okay.
110A.
I would agree. My feeling is with Jordan and John, I think if, most likely, if you're gonna put this up there, you're not gonna have a lot of impact. I think you wanna encourage him to study the system, would be my suggestion, because if you start putting, if you're pushing, every 1,000 kW is 4 amps, just to kind of give you, every 4 panels roughly is 4 amps. So if you're thinking through that and just thinking through, our mission statement of, reliable, right, and pushing them to come back to you, I would also agree that you want them submitting that data so that they're just not, putting 4 more amps on the system and bypassing it, because I'm pretty sure that people would be doing that, just out of my experience with it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I would mention as well that obviously you're not going to reset the grandfather period. So if 10 years from now I want to add to it, I only have 5 years of today's rates left over. So it all resets at 2033.
yeah, everybody goes to that date, so.
Right.
And I would just say if it's a problem, right, we bring it back up. If we're seeing all 200 of these customers expanding their system, I just don't see that I'm guessing that it's not really an issue is what I would be willing to guess, but.
So, in answer to the question, the first question, they would not lose their net metering if they increase the size of their system. So if they already have a net metering policy in place and they want to increase their system, they're still grandfathered, everything's still good with them, right? That's what we're all saying, minus Alan. And I see where Alan's coming from, because
I agree.
Alan is 100% correct. It's a new thing, but I also look at, we're dealing with 200 people, and out of those 200 people, who's really gonna expand their system? Maybe 10, maybe 15, maybe. So why make it hard on them? Would be my thing.
And then you think about with battery storage becoming a thing, say they expand their system and throw some battery storage, now they're not back feeding when we don't want them to. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point of expansion, right, is what if they're adding other things? So I think just as a second thought, right, is exactly that, as batteries, and how do we handle that?
They would need a new permit.
Get the permit, have them submit, but I like the idea personally of amending it so that they resubmit it so we do know what's going on. So I guess the question is do we feel comfortable saying that? I'm gonna look at Alan. If we're not ready to say that, I know that's a question we need to address. If we're ready, I just want to hear your thoughts on. I totally agree, or I'm like, no, we need more time to discuss it as a group.
Well, we've all had our say, so I'm outnumbered.
It's okay, Alan, I've been there.
let me say it this way, are we missing something? Or do you feel like there's something, if you read that mission statement, is there something that we are missing in our approach?
Well, if you're letting somebody put in new system, how are they different than the guy who didn't already have panels on his roof?
Well, and I think that's where and that's the next part of the question is how big can I go? And I think that's where that comes into play. I would assume most people right now with a solar system are at least 5 kW.
I would say so, yeah.
Average is in 7.5.
Oh, okay, but that's the average because you probably have somebody out there that's got a 15 kW on there,
quite a few.
you know? And with only 200 people, it doesn't take much to increase that average. Anyway, regardless, I think that's where the next part of the question is, what's gonna be our size? How big of a system can I go? And for most of these people, they might not be able to increase. And that might be the tourniquet.
And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but the max system size when all of these agreements prior to any changes is 15 kW. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's what it's been for the last 2 years.
So what we'd be saying, and I think this comes down to the terminology of grandfathering, and I think maybe, Jordan, I'd like you to enlighten us on your view of grandfathering, because I think this is a question that's out there as well, is what is included in grandfathering. But if, you know, depending on that definition, I'm under the understanding that everything that was existing at that time is what is grandfathering. So we would just say 15 kW was the max. That would be the maximum for them because they were, everything here was grandfathering. Maybe go there with the definition of grandfathering.
I think that seems reasonable. Originally, I had thought of it as just the financial piece, so the rate structure, because obviously people invested with certain expectations, whether or not those expectations were misplaced, but we're being kind and saying we're going to honor that investment. And so I thought of it more as just the rate structure and the policy side. For example, 15 kW, I didn't consider that necessarily to be the same level of need to honor that. Because obviously if someone installed solar before this happened, they would have put the 50 kW if they were planning on it. Now it's a new decision, and the expectations they have are informed today, whereas before, now we're changing, you know what I mean? So, but that said, I'm not opposed to saying grandfathering includes the whole net metering agreement as it was at the time. It doesn't offend me, and I think we've kicked around caps and 15 kW.
As it was at the time, most of them were probably put in under the 10 kW rate. It's only been the last couple of years that
Just last couple of years,
it's bumped up to
council bumped it to
15.
15.
And if we
okay.
decide to back it back
That's
down
interesting.
again, are you going to give the ones that were put in during that 2-year window the 15?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that makes it a little more complicated. So I guess I kind of go back to my original thought that it's the rate structure itself. We're grandfathering the rates, the block rate structure, and then the compensation for solar, and then the 15 kW. I think it would be nice if it were uniform for everybody.
John, will you scroll through? I got my net metering agreement there.
This one
mine.
shut off, but I'm done with it for now.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, you're fine. Because the way I see this is we have a contractual obligation with that customer, and what it states, and this is part of, I know we're kind of going through a bunch of different questions, but what it states is within 30 days, if something changes, we need to notify of a change, right? So if I read this, and I was just going to see if there is a max system size. I don't believe that there is in a net metering, is there?
Yes.
In the agreement, is there a maximum?
Yeah,
system?
it states
Yes,
15.
it's 15.
So
On the latest one's been then implemented for the last 2 years, yes.
mine's a little older. Here. Let's see, I've got
it's in there, it's about halfway through, probably, the net metering agreement.
December 2013, that's when I did mine. Because if that's the case, I'm wondering if there's, accounting-wise, if there's really a 110A. Was there only 2 net metering agreements? Is there a 110A and a 110B? Is that fair? Two different net metering agreements, that's all we've ever had?
Yeah, that's pretty much, that's it.
Because I'm wondering if it's just your agreement's in place. If I think of it as just a contract together, right, it's, unless we go back and change all of each person's individual terms, if we just said, this is your agreement, yeah, this is 10 kW is what mine says. So if we just said 110A would be, we go back through the system and say, this is their agreement. 110B would be everybody in
But,
between.
yeah, I don't know why we need to, though. I mean, what difference does that make? I mean, as far as 10 or 15, I mean, it doesn't make a difference on the net meter agreement. I mean, they're already in, they're installed.
Just for expansion is what we're talking.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. Are we going to leave the
Oh,
door
if they
open for
expand it
them
to-
to
oh, no.
upsize if they want to? If they didn't initially put the 15 in, but
Oh.
now they want to come back and add.
So,
And I still go back to, I don't think we should be encouraging people to overbuild. I'm okay with them sizing it right for their load, but I don't think this should be them being a net power producer, that we're buying power from them every year.
So I'm going to ask this question. So I have a follow-up question to that I don't understand. In the current net metering, we changed how we bill, right? So we do a monthly true-up. So are we planning to notify, in grandfathering, if John and I have a system, will we notify our customers? Well, are we planning to still provide checks to the grandfathered customers on a yearly basis?
If we're going, unless you guys change something, that's the way it is. That's the way the old agreement is, so that's what we're honoring.
Okay, perfect.
that was part of the grandfathering.
Okay.
Yeah, the only difference they'd see is that, you know, even the grandfather people are gonna have to pay the $8 customer charge, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
Okay.
Are there any customers that have been paid checks?
yeah, there's been, 3 or 4 each year.
so I like things simple. And correct me if I'm wrong, but four of the 5 of us are, if you have a net metering in place, you change your system, you still maintain your grandfather status. Okay? The caveat being, we haven't determined the size of solar. Now, what's fair is, if it were, or John or Jordan, you could only go to 10 kW. Sorry, that's what your net metering is. For a few others, they could go up to 15, because that's what their net metering agreement is. That's what's fair, right?
That makes sense. So the time they signed their net metering agreement, what it stated in there.
Yeah, because the reality is, we could come back as a council and say, hey, you know what, the biggest size system is gonna be 7 kW. That's all we're gonna start allowing. Unless you can show us a reason why you would need something else. I'm running 4 of the new vans that are, I don't know what's gonna come down the road. Unless they could prove 7 kW. And there again, I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying that's what we're deciding. So to simply answer this first question, you would maintain your grandfather, and you could increase your array to whatever your net metering was. Right?
And if they wanted to go above that, they would lose their grandfathering?
That's accurate.
Then I think that goes right into Alan. This is a new ballgame. You change the rules, not us. We're adhering to the contract that we signed with you. The minute that one of the parties breaks the contract, all bets are off, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Seems fair.
I mean, that's what seems fair and simple.
So do we want to make a motion on this? That's what we're amending this?
I think we need to get it in writing so we can all look at it, review it, make sure, and then may have a motion on it the next meeting.
Okay,
I think
so
that's fair.
let's go through and answer these questions, and we'll have Stacy
Get-
write them up.
Yeah.
And then
Let's
we
get it
can
on
all say,
paper.
yeah,
So then we have a document, this is what we voted on, not
yeah.
the way I remember.
Yeah, that's right. I agree. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I agree.
John's all 25 years.
I distinctly remember saying 30, yeah. Will grandfathered solar customers be able to add to their solar array and remain grandfathered? We've decided yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And then to the B of that question, how big can they go, depends on their net metering agreement.
That's right. They can
Okay.
only expand to the cap at the net metering agreement that was in place, that's already
At the
on
time.
file.
And I know I can hear it out there in the distance, you know, that's not fair because I signed at 10 and my neighbor got 15. I'm gonna go back to life isn't fair.
Well, but now, when we have a customer that we know their usage, you can go that much as long as you're still using that much, as long as you stay net.
Yes. That's to draw the line in the sand. That's where we're going from here on, right? I mean, granted, we still have to determine a size, but say for instance, John, you've got 3 electric cars.
I do.
Okay, I have no electric cars. My array would be smaller than John's, just by usage, right? Because honestly, like, I shouldn't be viewing this as a power supplier. I'm trying to offset my bill, is what I'm trying to do, not have the city pay for my system.
Yeah. Watt hours is what my cars use, by the way, for a year. 5 megawatt.
All 3 or 5 megawatt or 5
All
each?
3 total. All 3 cars combined,
5
5 megawatt hours.
That's a lot of power.
They think about it, $500 for fuel for 3 cars for a year.
Wow.
So next question.
Okay, so next question. Will grandfathering remain if the home is sold?
We also talked about this, and this goes down to a contract. The contract is if John or whomever, Jordan, they have these arrays on their homes. If they wanted to move to Sedona, Arizona, sell their house, whoever buys that house would have to enter into a new agreement with the city. So I'm back to the contract. The contract with the city is now broken.
Yeah, that's a contract between the homeowner and the city.
Exactly.
It's not
because the original contract was
interchangeable.
between John and the city, or Jordan and the city, or whomever. Brock or whomever,
Okay.
it doesn't matter.
And I think it's, now that I'm remembering our conversations, that's spelled out in the net metering agreement, right?
Yes.
And so if we're going by the principle of that's the contract and we want to maintain that, then all of these grandfathered customers signed that language.
I'm reading, the contract says, any change of ownership of customer, any change in ownership of the facility, or the premise upon which the facility is located, any change in location of the facility. That's what my net metering, I don't know if I may or be, but that's what my net metering states.
I'm pretty sure they all say the same
So
thing.
that
That has been
ends the
fine.
contract.
Yeah.
So selling the home.
That would,
Change of ownership.
that's right, the grandfathering would go away, and I think that would be our or in our question, it would just be,
It would go away.
here's your answers.
Yeah, it's
Basically.
It's already
in the
there.
net metering.
It's already there,
So
okay.
the answer to that question is you sell your home, you're done. That contract is broken. That's what's fair.
It's fair, I
It's
think,
fair.
personally.
I'm satisfied with that answer. Okay, so moving on, question 3. Will grandfathered customers stay on blocked tiers and 100% one-to-one solar credits until after 2033 and not go to time of use like everyone else? Or will everyone go to time of use?
So I think we just answered that question. Until the grandfathering runs out, they are on their own rate structure. That's why there was a grandfathering. And this is where Jordan's rate comes into.
That's my understanding as well.
So they'll stay on
So
the
they'll stay at whatever.
same blocked tiers. They
One-
won't-
110.
Yeah. Once again, we're referring back to the net metering agreement.
Right.
Okay.
And let me just point out with that, a little caveat that that doesn't mean that that particular rate structure isn't subject to rate changes. So if we come through in a few years and we need to increase rates, that doesn't mean that they don't ever get an increase. They continue at the same structure and they'll get the same percentage of solar credit, but all of those rates could increase a percentage
Gotcha.
based on the utility needs more money. So
Okay.
the rates aren't frozen, but the structure itself is frozen.
Okay.
That's right.
Right.
That's exactly
Yep.
right.
Once
So
again,
if
back
the
to
customer
fair.
charge goes up, they go up. same as
Exactly.
everyone
Yep.
else.
Sure.
For example,
Kilowatt
$5 to
hour,
$8, we
Yeah.
did from $5 to $8. That's not changing the structure of the bill. That's just changing the actual cost components.
So if in a few years we go, we need to change this from $8 to $15, then everyone would get it.
Right.
What happens if we decide we need to put a demand charge? AMI is going to allow us to put demand charges on.
Well, then, once again, the contract is written that there can be changes made to the contract. And I guess we tackle it at that point. But right now, here
So it
to,
does not protect them from that option
No.
of a demand charge.
I don't think it does.
So
You've got
you're
you've
talking
got
a
the-
demand charge like consuming that much power, or a demand charge you're backfeeding that much power?
Consuming.
Consuming. Okay.
It's an inrush current required for the maximum inrush current required for your house, or inrush current, inrush power.
Oh, typically over a 15-minute period.
That's right.
Right. I think that's a completely new decision, and if we decided, okay, this is going to have a big impact, we need to grandfather somebody, we would just have to make a new decision at that point.
You know what's ironic about demand charges is once you put that on a residential customer, battery storage pays for itself so fast. And I don't want to say this on the record, but I'm going to say it out loud anyway. I almost wish it would happen because I want battery, but I can't justify it. But
Well, and that's what we were hoping the time of use rates do too, to shave our peak
Yeah,
and incentivize them to use the power when they produce it, so.
yeah.
Store it.
Yeah, I think oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's a step in the right direction, probably not as drastic as what demand charges would be, but I think that's just a testament to actually showing in the bill the actual costs. And it's, I think, across industries, insurance and healthcare and all these things, if we knew what the actual cost was, then it makes decision-making so much easier, and it makes allocation of resources to different kinds of innovation so much more efficient. But if you're just lumping everything in and then just averaging it out to everybody, there's just no incentive to make any kind of economic decision. But
So read the question again.
Will grandfathered customers stay on block tiers and 100 and one-to-one solar credits until after 2033 and not time of use like everyone else?
Okay, so part of the answer is they won't go to time of use until after the grandfathering is up. They will stay on whatever agreement they made on their net metering agreement, but that the rates can change.
Yeah, and it states that in that meeting
Right.
agreement also, that's subject to the city council's decision on.
See, because
Fees and rates.
what's loaded in there is that one-to-one credit. That might change.
For the grandfathering?
It might change. I'm just saying it might change. I'm not saying it's going to
Might,
change.
okay.
It might change.
Yeah, I don't think there is any guarantee. The city council
Yeah.
has the right to change. They can withdraw this grandfathering thing if they want to.
they can't.
A
States that
year
at
from
any
now,
time.
5 years from now, 10 years from now, even though that's what we're saying the target is, they might say,
we're down to 10 net metering customers. We're eliminating that rate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the other 150
15 years from
moved.
now, yeah. if
That's
they
right.
all moved.
Seven years from now, 90% of them have moved.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say that is.
So even that timeline is
Yeah.
subject to change.
Sure.
Yeah, that's the current plan, and the plan can be modified anytime.
And
Obviously, it would come to a vote.
I think somewhere in the document that we vote on, we need to make sure that's clearly stated. This is what the rate is today, and it is always subject to change by the city council. That's it. We cannot lock in the city council on this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, and that's where that 1-to-1, and will the 1-to-1 remain? I'm like, we can't guarantee that. We can't. I want to
Yeah,
say it.
we
but I
can't lock in future city councils
Exactly.
to this rate.
Right.
I mean, that's what we are recommending
So-
right now, but 5 years from now, we might propose a whole different recommendation. This is our recommendation today, subject to change.
I'd agree, yeah.
So let me ask the question, and I think it might be, just thinking through Rocky Mountain Power's, and I totally agree that it can change. My question is what is our follow-up to our customers? The 200 customers that we have right now, are we doing any notification? I mean, we have to do 30 days of notification. Are we doing any notification? Should we do any notification? Is there a follow-up amendment to this stating
On
these
what?
questions and comments?
Well, anytime there's a proposal to the budget this is our new rate next year, you have a public hearing at least a month ahead of that. So there, I don't think we have to notify them individually.
So this says that, that you need to give me 30 days notice, right, prior to any changes or anything,
But we're
so
grandfathering, so it's not a change for them, right?
no changes at all, so we don't,
So
no
I-
notification.
We could, but I don't see where we'd have to. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm wondering if, I guess what my question is, and my concern is if we want to put an informational sheet that says, here's where you are part of this grandfathering, we're giving them notice that this is what we see, that it is subject to change. You know, otherwise, I guess it doesn't really matter, because 30 days before, you could just pull the plug and, you know, do whatever you would want at that time. However, you know, I think something that I would just say, let's say that this goes through and we get to 2033, at that point, you know, what if it's missed? What if it's just a decimal place at that point? So if we were to give them notice that we are planning to terminate this agreement, or, you know, at 2033, contingent that you're still the same customer, you know, I'm just wondering if we would want to do that notification now, that this is planning to end at that date, or if it's better to just say, wait till 2033, 30 days prior, and send that out. I mean, you guys tell me what you think.
I don't think it'd hurt to send something out that laid out all those parameters, you know, so people know if you sell your home, whatever, you know, all these factors that they know up front, and that they're grandfathered till 2033.
So I'm just thinking this in my head. We answer these questions, we get them in writing, we give our stamp of approval, we find out who the 200-plus customers are, and they get a mailed copy.
That's right.
Here's your notice. Grant,
No matter what we vote on, we have no authority. It's up to the city council.
granted, but
All we can do is recommend.
sure.
That's right.
We give it to the city council says, yes, these are the answers to these questions, those 200 people get those answers.
That's right.
That becomes the official notice.
That's right.
Do you
Not that
have
they
to
need
mail
it.
them out to them? Can you post it online?
Well, okay,
It's
once
in a
again,
public meeting.
city council gets to determine how the
Yeah, I'm
information
not
gets
sure
to
we
it.
have to contact each one of them individually.
True, it's true.
I don't know legally, but what it says is shall remain in effect prior to written notice. So I'm under the understanding, I don't know if that means posted written notice or, but if I was doing business with, and these are our customers, I would suggest personally, if outside of this here in my business, I would say, I would notify those guys. Good business practice would
Yeah,
say,
as
here's what.
customer service, yeah.
Yeah.
Be good.
And
idea.
it wouldn't be anything to fold that up and put it in their bill that's already going to them. We already know who they are through the billing process. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's not as easy as you make it sound. It's an automated system, I'm assuming.
Even if it's a separate,
know.
even if it's a separate envelope, you know,
Yeah.
200 stamps, you know, spend
But once
50
again,
bucks.
and I agree with Alan, because that will become something the city council has to do, or the power department. We can give them the answers to the questions, and then they can do whatever they want with it. Our recommendation being, and I agree with Brock, our recommendation being is those people are contacted with this information. Then there is absolutely no, well, you caught me off guard. Well, we kind of didn't. It's
I
posted
agree.
on the website, you got it mailed to you.
You have 15 years. If you want to, here's our power board, come talk about it.
Come talk about it.
Is it 15 years? Is that what it's out?
No, it's 20, wasn't it? I wanted 15, isn't it 20?
No, it's 15.
Is it 15? Oh, maybe I only wanted.
I think
Yeah.
it's 25. Was it 25?
It was 15 was the one day only.
Everyone was 15, is that, so let's just follow up with that question. It's 15 from December, or January 1st, 2018.
Yep,
Because it went out to 30.
2033,
Yep.
yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's right.
okay.
So that's all the questions I had. Did you have any, Jordan?
I think that covers it. Yeah, I got some of those same ones, so.
Okay.
So the only other follow-up question that I want to make clear is if, let me think how to do this. Current grandfathering would be, I want to talk a little more on today, not if it's going to change, but it is 1-to-1 credit. So if we inflate our rates, let's say that they go to 15 cents, just as an example, I'm not saying they're going there. If they go to 15 cents, they will receive 1-to-1 credits today. I'm not saying it's not going to change, but that's what they would receive today. Is that accurate?
Right.
So it's inflating with that in that 15 years.
Right.
Okay, just wanted to
This
make sure.
follows the retail price.
Okay, okay,
Until
perfect.
we get information that says that's counterproductive,
Okay,
Yeah.
which Alan can already give me that information.
So do you want to move to the commercial?
so one last item, sorry.
Sure.
One last item. I just was going through my questions log. So Bruce and I were going back and forth. I never responded back. The one thing that I wanted to, on the net metering agreement, so I read that it has a plaque, but what I was getting at on that terminology would be to require a plaque, but also require a map, location map, on that main disconnect. The purpose for this is as we start adding batteries to a system and starting to put first responders in there, I just want to make sure that that locates the battery locations so that they know, if there's hazardous batteries that are, if the building's on fire, that's really the purpose of adding everything that's there. Just add the terminology map in there so that it makes them put the location map.
Is that displayed at the disconnect?
That's what this is what I'm
I saw
proposing.
I saw what it was, but where are we placing that?
At the disconnect.
Yeah, at the disconnect,
Or-
and I call it the
Or in some
fire.
situations at the meter, at the net
That's right.
meter.
Within 10 feet of the
and
meter.
if it's, and then it
Yeah,
could
but
be
that's
on
where-
their side
that's
of the
where the
building.
fireman
Sometimes they're out at a
disconnect is,
barn or
right?
something, but a map that's showing that
That's
location.
right. Map specifically, just showing
Which we've always required that, yeah.
the map piece too.
Yeah, well, if it's not right there, we always have. But it'd be good to put that in for, battery, because we never had a battery issue because we don't have, one or two out there, so.
So yeah, so whenever I've done training for first responders, I've always told them,
Gotta have maps.
you have to have a map just so that they know I'm standing right here and here's all the equipment with any disconnect, anything. They know where to go. You know, if they have hazards, if they have, you know, hazards in the house, they need to know how to shut that off.
So the map is on the placard?
Yeah, so the placard, so only change that I'm suggesting is, and I can pass this around, is that map right there is,
Okay,
replaces your placard that's at the meter disconnect.
gotcha. That's right, I remember that.
Have we had requests for battery installations?
There are a couple installed now.
I guess with that, we would have to know what kind of battery it is. Is it NiCad? Is it lithium? Is it, because it's all handled differently.
And that's
You
that's
don't
something.
treat a NiCad battery like a lithium battery when you're dealing with a fire. So the fireman would have to know.
So that's something maybe add to the building inspection department, you know,
Yeah,
side to make sure that
You have to
that they do
state
that
what
too, so we don't.
battery system you've got going. NiCad, lithium, acid cell,
That's right,
because they're all different.
that's right.
How you respond to them, I should say, because lithium will reignite. It'll just keep going.
Well,
Put it out and come back and.
depends on the chemistry. If you've got the the
Yeah,
lithium iron phosphate, you can drive a spike through that and it won't even do anything.
right, right.
If you have lead acid, then, you know, I think just informing them that it's there and
Battery
taking
system,
precautions.
this is what it is. So you can say battery system, this is what it composes of. And you could even have multiple. I've got some lead acid, I've got some NiCad, I got, you know, just as long as it's listed and where they are. They're in the garage, they're downstairs in the kids' room. They're next to my 25-year wheat.
Don't jump on the bed, you're gonna short out the batteries.
That's what's keeping the frame up.
We already had a house fire caused by a battery
Oh, really?
yesterday.
Oh, they're in Bountiful?
Yes.
Really?
I can tell you horror stories all day long about batteries and
Oh,
solar
man.
and put them in their garage and leaving them exposed and, you know, hey, don't open that door too wide and crazy stuff. So I think it's something we'll have to face. And I think just having that map in there at least is telling them, hey, avoid this area or, you know, do that.
Or treat it as such.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So any other questions? Sorry. And then we're going to go to commercial net metering.
A brief commercial interruption.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, Jordan.
So, yeah, so we have had a question on the net metering agreement as it relates to commercial, and I think we have one particular customer who's approached the city with a project, and so we want to give them some clarity pretty quickly. We talked a little bit about it last time, and so to date, we've discussed having a feed-in tariff, and we have had a feed-in tariff for a customer already on our system that's compensated at the average rate of our cost of energy generation from UAMPS. And so today, based on numbers from Bruce, that's 6.7 cents is what that would be.
What they're getting paid now?
Right.
Is 6.18 cents.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood that. 6.18 cents.
That was from the study that Mark Beauchamp did on the commercial value of solar.
Is that for the school? Because they're
Yes.
the only ones tied in, right?
Well, there's some other ones, but they're small enough that they don't have the net meter and stuff, so that's.
But that's
the only
who
one.
we're talking
That's who we're
about.
talking
Yeah.
about.
And so that's right in line with what our cost was when we looked at it for residential, was 6.3 cents, or compensation rate, if you will. And so I had recommended continuing that pattern with commercial customers. And part of the problem with that is our commercial rates with the 3 block structures go down to 5 point some odd cents on the second block, and then on the third block, 4.8 cents or so. And so if you're continuing to compensate solar at 6.3 cents, then you're paying more than what you're actually charging on a volumetric basis. And so my recommendation to that, and I guess we can put this in the notes for Stacy and vote on it along with all these other answers, but my recommendation would be to compensate on a feed-in tariff at the average cost from UAMPS, which is our 6.3 cents, and then have a block structure that follows parallel with the actual retail rate. So if you produce more than 1,000 and it's feeding back in the system, once you hit 1,000, then that solar rate drops along with the retail rate, and you just maintain the same percentage discount as you go down. So it'd be 5 cents in the second block, and then the third block would be 4 cents that you're actually receiving back for the solar you produce, just so that it's matched up with the actual retail rate.
So basically, it's a 1-to-1 depending on what block you're in.
It's actually a percentage. So
Okay.
in the first block, the 6.3 cents is only a percentage of the retail rate. Then the retail rate drops, you'd maintain the same percentage
Okay, percentage. So it's a
wise.
percentage
So they'd both
okay.
step down together.
Gotcha.
Yep, just to
Do you
match
have
up with
those,
the
I
retail
don't
rate.
have those numbers with me. What was that second tier? I thought was still like 6.5 or something, wasn't it? And then the third tier was like 4.7, if I remember right.
On the commercial rates,
Yeah, the commercial rates.
it's in that model that,
I can go grab my
here, let me open it up
hard
here.
copy here.
I got it. I just got to open it here.
But are we going backwards on this?
Not if it's following their tier.
Well, the first thing they offset is the lowest level, not the top level.
So
You should be offsetting the lowest first, and I don't know how you come up with that, because the lowest block is infinite.
So
They're
why wouldn't I be offsetting my first rather than my last?
because the more you use, the cheaper it gets. Now you quit using.
So what I'm saying is if I used 1,000 and I produced 1,000, I'm matching those up. And then I used, what are we at, 9,000 is the
9,000
break.
more.
I used 8,000 more to get me to 9,000, and maybe I produced that much more, and so I matched those up, right?
You're reducing your kilowatt hours, your total kilowatt hours of usage. So you're shaving off the cheaper ones first. If you still use.
I don't see the I guess accounting-wise, I don't see how you say, okay, so let's say I'm producing solar all month long and I'm using all month long. For the first 15 days, I'm ticking up to 1,000. And then day 16, I start going above that. So you're saying that I'm going to take all of your solar and apply it to just the last 15 days, even though I was producing at the time when I was coming up with the first 1,000, right? And I was producing, I mean, you're producing and you're using all month long, and so I think it makes most sense to me to say your first 1,000, I don't know.
Whatever kilowatt hours, and here again, I don't think they should be power producers, they should be customers.
Right.
So whatever kilowatt hours are left are at the first block rate. That's what they pay. That means you've shaved off the lower blocks first, and there's still, what's left there is in the highest kilowatt hour rate.
Let me ask a clarifying question. Are we, for all of our commercials, because right now we only have one, he's only allowed to backfeed. He's not allowed, the school does not use any of the solar they produce. It's a complete backfeed. Are we saying that all of our commercial customers will be backfed systems? Brock's shaking his head no. I agree with that. But right now, we don't have a model for that.
But I think that the definition of a feed-in tariff would be that it is a line-side connection, not a load-side connection. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Yeah.
So just by definition, what I'm saying is what Jordan's talking about is we would not connect load side. It would always be on a line-side connection. There'd be a meter sitting there for the solar that's plugging into, there'd be a meter for their usage and a meter for their solar.
That's right. So their
By
solar,
definition.
so their solar meter would be racking up all these numbers, and their consumption meter would be racking up numbers, and they'd be billed for their consumption and credited for their credits. And in that sense, it makes sense, the way Jordan was explaining it, because they're still being billed for their consumption, expensive in the first tier and then progressively less in the other tiers. But then the solar credit is the same way. The first solar is more valuable, and then as they produce more and more, it goes down.
So here's what I suggest we should do, and you guys tell me what you think. But I think that we have an urgency to get this through for a commercial customer. Is that accurate? We have a commercial customer that's here. If I reflect on the memory of what we discussed, was as how it works today is they bring the project to you, and then you approve it as a feed-in tariff. So if I'm not mistaken, so that we can get these questions all dialed in, what I would suggest is have them present the project and say, we would like to do a feed-in tariff. This would be our second one at 6.18 cents. Is that a fair way to do it? That is how we're doing it today, right?
Yeah, we just set that up, a temporary, net meter agreement, or just an agreement with the school district, knowing full well that this was not, set in stone. It was, subject to change. So, but the biggest issue that I see on this project is the one I told you, it's right across the street.
Yeah.
So the sizing is the issue on this one, because it's all these different different apartments apartments or whatever this business.
Rental units.
Yeah, rental units they have over there. Well, the one guy pays all the bills. There's 5 meters over there. Okay, so the solar company's talking them into sizing the system for all 5 of those places, but they're only planning on connecting to the 1 meter. Are we going to let them do that, or are we going to hold them to a percentage of each service size, each individual, what your usage is? So that's the question.
Just talking through that a little bit before we go into, what we can do. I think the thing to remember is, I don't know that it's, I don't believe, and I don't know the code reference, but I don't believe it's legal for him to, is he charging those tenants right there for power?
I don't know how he has set up. I don't know how many they have. They may have, and that's another problem too. He may right now be using all 5, but in the future he could be, down to 1 or none. So, how do you?
So how many meters do we have on the building? We have 5.
5 for that section there, yeah.
And we're billing them direct.
No,
Well,
billing him.
Well, they'll go to wherever, whatever, and then he's the one paying them, but
Yeah.
right now, because
Yeah,
he's.
we're reading each meter and issuing a bill for each meter.
Yes. So they could be separated, yeah.
So let me ask one question. We have 5 meters. We're not gonna put 5 solar meters on there. They're gonna have one array.
Depends on if you say, we won't let you go a certain size of your, your past usage, then you'd make him, he'd have to go 5 different, systems,
You see what I'm
inverters, going each
saying?
one.
I mean, really, essentially, he's only gonna have 1 array.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
But are we gonna make him
So
put 5 feet in?
he either puts 1 meter on the building to get 1 array, or he has to have 5 different.
5 different array
If
meters?
if he's gonna overproduce for the meter, this goes back to the other argument, are you a power producer or are you a customer?
Right.
We shouldn't, because he could oversize that significantly for the usage there.
That's why I'd suggest, that it went by each individual meter, because the ownership could change too, like Jordan and I talked about that, so
Yeah,
that
it
could.
makes sense to
That
line
could really
it up.
mess things up.
A meter and a solar agreement are tied together, and it's 1 for 1.
Yeah.
Here's where he's gonna run into an issue, is his real estate. He might have 5 meters on there, but how much roof space does he have?
Well, they're planning on putting 45 kW up there, so it looks like they got plenty of room for all 5 of those. It'd just be separate inverters and, you know.
So even if you divide it 5 ways, it's 9 kilowatts per.
Yeah, I mean, he falls within, but so, okay, so what I'm hearing is he'll have Kaysville City's meter, and then he'll have his line-in meter. So his solar can produce, and yay, here it comes, and they can use, and then it will be the difference between the two. Is that how I'm reading the billing?
It depends on how you set it up. If you do it as a feed-in tariff, then he'd have to come in line side. There'd have to be a box above the meter, you know, line side. 1 meter would read everything that he produced, and we'd pay him 6.18 cents or whatever the rate was.
What's the total load on the building?
What's that?
What's the total load on the building?
Oh, I don't know. There's tons of meters over there, so we'd have to go through.
Well,
look
you
at the other
said
ones.
5.
Well, on that area of the building, that section of the building, it's this whole block here. So on that transformer bank, there's more. There's probably
Well,
10
what
or
I'm
15
saying, the
meters
ones
on.
he's connected with, and he wants to put in 45 kW, do the 5 meters that he's connected, that are his, use more than 45 kW?
I don't believe so. They tried to size it so it would cover 100%. So they looked at the 5 meters and the last year's usage, and that's where they figured the 45 kW.
I think the other issue that you're up against is submitting a load study, and just making sure that, you know, that where they're interconnecting, you know, those types of things, that we review that, and that we have the capacity on, you know, the transformers and those types of things.
Yeah, there's an issue. There's a 3-phase bank there that feeds 10 other meters too, so besides those 5.
And maybe I'm off here, but what I would suggest is have them submit. I mean, we're defining it, and what I think, if they're interested, right, would be, we have one. I mean, outside of here, you know, I've done a lot of net metering agreements. I've talked, you know, aggregation. It doesn't make sense to aggregate those types of things. But as a city, we've done one system, and we're defining that. So maybe they are working with us to help scope that along the way, because to be honest with you, I'm a little concerned of rushing this.
Yeah.
Just because one customer wants it.
Right.
And so my opinion would be, if they're serious about this and they want to help get this through, then they would work as our partner, and we would talk about the problems that we see along the way. Okay, they could present what they're planning. We could look at that, and that would be our sample, essentially, that helps define net metering in Kaysville commercial, because that would be my suggestion. I don't know if everyone else
The
is.
one thing I think would clarify that is if we were going to, you know, decide how much of their current usage you're going to let them use. You know what I mean? How much, what size systems, that would define that whole project,
Right.
you know, by meter.
And
I mean, look at the usage that those meters are already consuming right
Yeah,
now.
and like you talked about, let them go a certain percentage of that.
So 80% of whatever they're using, because we don't want them to be a power producer.
I think the risk that we face right now is the time of day usage, right? So the question that I think we're facing with this is, commercially, you run the risk of, we can say that they only do 80% of their solar today, but if a customer changes, what happens? Now that limit means nothing. So I think my opinion still is the fact that it'd be very helpful to use a sample project for us. Maybe there's 2. When Rocky Mountain Power started this net metering, that's exactly what they did. Is they just said, look, this is a sample project, submit it. And they picked more than 1, but they said, here's 7 or 10 or, you know, so many, so that they could understand. Right now we have a feed-in tariff. Maybe we start understanding how that works with the feed-in tariff. You know, what is the benefit of a feed-in tariff? What is the accounting? What's the issues? And then my suggestion would be, here's this sample project. if there's any other sample projects, right, bring them to the table. Let's review them all at the same time and really get this right and not rush it. That's my opinion. I don't know how everyone else feels, but I'm not personally, I don't want to, I'd hate to sacrifice the integrity of, you know, the whole reason we're all here, right, is to make sure we nail this correct and then feel pressured to get that in for that one customer. That's my opinion.
Would we want to invite them to the next Power Commission meeting and put an agenda item for them to discuss what they want? And
I think that's what I would like to see. I don't know everyone else.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it would.
if they want the decision, I think they need to come to the board and help us understand. I mean, this goes right back to the gentleman that was here with the subdivision. Help us understand your problem, and I mean, he was
Yeah.
unable to do it, and it's just like, well, and unfortunately, we're bound by the rules that are already set in place. Help us understand.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I think, Bruce, does that seem fair to you, is to invite them to come speak at the next meeting? I can add it as an agenda, and then we can start understanding, and then I think it's just an informative piece. We don't make any decisions that day. It's just, what are we going to be faced with, you know, three-phase power? Impact studies are way more important on on that, especially, you know, the data of the system. What happens if they need to update it? Who pays for that, right? I think we just need to understand, and using a sample is going to, I think, help expedite the process.
Let me ask you this. This has been on your plate for a while. Do you have a recommendation? How does staff want to handle this?
That's a good question.
I like the feed-in tariff setup and line side connection, and then the way Jordan structured the tiers, that makes sense. Like I say, to me, the only missing piece is, are you going to limit them to a size, you know, per service? That would clarify everything. I mean, if you're going to limit it to a size, then they can't do 5 or 45 kW on 1 meter, you know, because their highest use meter, you know, is probably going to be, 10 or 15 probably.
Don't say it's 15.
So if that was, in my mind, if that was answered, if you had an answer to that, that would solve all the other mysteries, and then it's just determining how you want to set it up, as a feed-in tariff or a net metering structure.
So I think the only suggestion that I would make in front of that would be that they submit the plans so that we could look at, the arc fault, all those types of things.
They've submitted the plans. I've got them, so.
Okay.
But I pulled them because they tried to sign a residential net metering agreement and push it through the building department, so.
And I just want to give the right impression, as far as the analysis goes. I feel comfortable saying that the 6.3 cents itself isn't a rushed number. I mean, it's been vetted pretty thoroughly. That's the number we came up with as part of the overall model as well. It's just a matter of structuring it in the way that makes most sense for commercial rather than residential, because they are completely different as far as the load pattern and when is that peak happening. And commercial or residential customers are pretty homogeneous as far as their pattern for the most part. And commercial, it's like it could be all over the map depending on what their business is, how they're using electricity. So I just want to say that 6.3 cents isn't a rush job, but we certainly want to be careful and make sure it's structured the right way.
But what was the residential? What credit are we given?
6.6.
So residential 6.6. And what's the residential kilowatt hour charge?
it's like
The new charge is, what was it?
8.8.
9 or 8.7, I can't remember the new one. The old one was 9.07, I can tell you.
Yeah, a little under 9, and then it goes up.
It was
to-
2 point, I think it was
Little
2
less than
cents
10.
different, so it was like 8.6, 8.65 or
Yeah.
something.
And the 2 cents paid for the distribution, for
Exactly.
the line
Correct.
side.
Exactly.
But then that's too high for commercial. Because your commercial kilowatt hour charge is significantly less than.
So it's 8.8, it's 8.8 from 0 to 1,000, drops down to 5.8. And that's where I'd recommend dropping the solar credit as well, in tandem with the retail rate.
So the commercial tier 1 was 8.8, but the solar
Or
credit
was
was
it-
only 6.18.
It's 8.04, I apologize, on the commercial side.
Okay.
And then the credit, I'd recommend 6.3 cents starting out.
My question and that I would pose is more safety. You're talking different currents, different impacts, so more on my side, I would like to understand just our impacts, what does that study look like? How are we actually physically tying into it, the grid? Who pays for those upgrades? Because my concern is this, exactly, they should, right?
Yes.
My concern would be that depending on a system size, let's say that we do require them to put 1 meter in, then they need to realize that would be their cost to consolidate meters. If it requires a upgrade in transformer, do you know that offhand how big the transformer is feeding that building?
I'm trying to remember, it's a 3-phase bank. I think it's got 50 in the center and 25s on the side, if I remember right.
Because typically what happens, and I don't know if there's a lot of like high lake deltas around in our system, is there by chance?
But we have some.
So what I would tell you is it's very common for us in the solar industry to go in and say, walk in. I would be willing to bet that that's probably one of them, just guessing off of the data of that system, but guessing, completely guessing, and making sure that they're actually upgrading the system and installing the right inverters that will actually work with that equipment, and that they actually end up paying those fees. It's just my suggestion on the actual physical tie-in piece, not the counting dollars.
Yeah, when we did the school too, we told them up front too that we're going to send that out to an engineering company, and they were going to front all the costs. It was about $4,500 or $4,700 for them to do that study on the school.
Okay. Yeah, because I know when we had to change out a pole on just a different one, it was, changing out the pole, transformer banks and everything, it was 10 G's that we, as a commercial installer, had to pay.
Yeah, that'd be above and beyond.
That's right.
Whatever the study said that they needed done, yeah.
That's right. So is that a fair approach? So it sounds like the main thing that what you're hoping to achieve is the system cap in commercial.
Well, yeah, just to see how you guys want to structure it.
And I think that all depends on, I don't think we can say commercial, because you could have an office building that's commercial, that's running a fax machine and a copier and a modem, and you can have Bob's motorcycle shop that's grinding, arc welding, and the power is completely different. The power usage is complete. One's almost a residential, and the other one is almost an industrial.
And you could have Smith's Marketplace.
Exactly.
We've got to come up with something that will cover every option.
I guess the simple answer is it becomes a case-by-case study. What's he really pulling?
We've got to have a policy that we can't customize a policy for every customer that comes along and wants to do this.
I have a recommendation, and I think this recommendation would apply to residential as well, but why not put a cap to begin with? And I would recommend 10 kW. And then if a customer feels like their load justifies exceeding that cap, they're welcome to submit a year's worth of their usage and request on a case-by-case basis to go over that. But if they don't have that, then it's 10 kW by meter.
What if instead of an arbitrary 10 kW cap, we say, whatever you're paying in demand charges, like if you're using 9 kilowatts and your demand charge is based on that, then that's your cap. Or Smith's, a megawatt is your demand charge, that's your cap. So we just base it off of
And that's-
demand
I-
charge.
I think that's what I was saying by a case by case, is you look at what they're using, and that's how you, I mean, the net metering policy can be in place, but the variable is the size of array that you have.
And let them go to 100% of the maximum demand, or?
No, and we could even write
Or
that
whatever.
in. We could say it's 80% of your max.
80% of your
or
demand
90%
charge,
of
yeah.
your max.
Or less, because how many months do they hit that max? So one month out of the year, the rest of the time they're half that?
Okay, there you go. I mean, and we could, really, the net metering could be all in place with two variables. Size of your system, or whatever your demand is, 40%, 60%,
80% of your average demand.
or 80% of your average demand, and there it is.
Or we could base it on energy consumption for the year and demand charge. So you could have a really high demand charge, but not a lot of energy consumption. Maybe you're some arc welding shop or something.
Yeah, or Smith's, those refrigerators, they pull a ton of power, and they're running 24/7. Whether it's 45 degrees outside or 115.
Or you could be a commercial charging station that pulls 50,000 watts, and one car a month shows up because no one's really doing them yet.
Exactly.
So let me,
I like the idea of using demand, yeah.
so,
Well, it was a product with usage and demand, right, John?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we can say, 70% of energy usage, or, I don't know, come up with a number that's a mix of the two.
and I think thing to remember here, though, is anytime a customer changes, that number is going to be completely used. So just making sure that the infrastructure that's in place is adequate is really crucial. In case there is a change of customer, having that data is going to be good. But I think maybe what we can do to kind of bite this off is, if you could, maybe Jordan, maybe you can send out your recommendations to the group in an email. Maybe it's right now we have commercial A, B, and C.
Right.
And maybe we just bite this off as they would fall under this group, and we want to start with, B or C, and then we just, each one. Right now, we're set up that way. Here's our recommendations, and then next meeting, we can start, and by sending that email out, we can start having dialogue on.
Yeah, a specific
Exactly.
proposal.
That's right. So right now, it's a 45 kW system. They're proposing 1 meter connection in a feed-in tariff, so that would fall us into, so we don't know their usage. We don't know their usage, so they'd be over 9 kW, but is there any way that you could send us their usage on those?
Yeah.
On those meters in that group, and then we can start dissecting.
So let me ask you this,
Suggestions.
Brock, are we gonna make him go to 1 meter? There'll be a one-on-one?
That's what he's proposing.
Oh, he's proposing 1 meter,
That's what he was trying to do, yeah.
but he wants to feed 5 different.
He wants
But he
to
wants
leave
to-
5
wants it to
meters on
pay
the
the bill.
building, connect the solar to 1 meter.
To 1 meter. I see.
And use
But he
that
will
extra usage to
overproduce
pay his other bills.
For that 1
Yeah.
meter.
That's right.
So let's say, what if we said, give us your highest demand charge meter, and that's your cap?
And on that configuration, I think there's only one of them that has a demand on it.
Percentage of it.
The other ones are smaller,
Yeah.
residential
Yeah.
meter.
So maybe, just for the sake of time, and I love everyone's passion, and I can go another hour if you guys want, but I think what we do is we start with the email, and then if you can respond with, maybe it's even the plans and their bills that they're seeing on each meter, then what we can do is start that dialogue. That'll really set the groundwork for next meeting. And then just to segue in, any thoughts, comments before I segue? Then what I'll do is I'll put the main agenda item will be commercial net metering. We won't have anything. There'll be two other items that I'll put on there for next time. That would be the maximum system size for residential. That's one that I think we're prepared to talk about and need to get finalized. Mm-hmm. And then Sean will be ready with the connection fee discussion. So those two and commercial net metering. And then as you guys will go through, if you guys will just go through the rest of these and try to prioritize. You know, if you can star them, I don't care how you do it. Just let me know if I've missed any. You know, if I need to add some, delete some, any of those types of things. Move some through priorities.
We also need the answers to the grandfather question on
Okay.
our motion on it.
Yeah, a motion on it, yeah. We need to be able to see it and polish it.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Also, Brock, there's one thing that we need to add to next meeting schedule is UAMPS wants to come do a presentation, talk about the CFPP project, carbon-free power project, which is the small modular reactors. Getting close to them wanting to do a power sales contract, so they're trying to educate. So we'll invite, you know, whatever city council members also that would, you know, would like to be involved in that. So I'll find out. I'll get a definite on time frame on how much time
It'll be
she thinks.
at the next power commission meeting, they want to do that.
Yes.
What percentage of how much have we
Well,
committed?
we still got to, right now we're at 7.5 megawatts is what and that was because, well, and we all decided this before the presidency changed and things in the direction of the EPA and things. So that was if we lost, you know, they're forcing coal out. So if we lost Hunter, which we have 5 megawatts of Hunter, San Juan's going out. We got a mega and a half of that. And then our Pleasant Valley wind contracts could be up too. So we're trying to cover that. But then that's the hard part. I have to do a little more research. You know, we don't need that much if Hunter's going to stay longer. You know, if it's going to be on longer. So it's going to be kind of a gamble as to, you know, how much we really want.
We have some IPP.
Yes, I have. Yes.
How much of that?
Right now we have 13 megawatts of it. With the downsizing, we'll be down to about 7. So, yeah.
What's the downsizing, Bruce?
What's that?
What do you mean by downsizing?
Right now it's 1,800 megawatt coal fire plant, and they're
It's the one down in Delta?
yes, and they're going to repower it with natural gas. They're still trying to come up with what the size is.
They're actually going to reduce the whole size of the plant once
Yes.
they switch over.
It's going to be smaller, so we don't know the exact
Is that because
megawatts yet.
LA doesn't want as much of it anymore?
Right, and some of that are California, so
They only
they
want-
have a real issue with natural
They're
gas in
zero.
California.
Yeah, it's not going to be a base load resource. They're going to try and shave peak with it, sounds to me like,
Yeah,
which is actually
up.
good for us.
yeah.
And I think that Jordan's model pretty much talks about where we're at, and I think what would be nice to look at is just overlaying that. And I'm, again, I you know, trying to watch so these meetings don't go, you know, 3 hours every time. But I think the key there would just be, my suggestion on that would just be, here's what we have, here's our projections of growth, and then we could overlay that, and then we could see, you know, okay, well, if we think it's going to decrease to this, you know, and then this, I think your model just taking it to the next step, and I hate pushing it to all to you on that piece, but I think that's going to give us a clear picture of here's where we would go, this is why we would do it, this is when this contract expires, you know.
Yeah. I think I'd be open to doing that. I think eventually, I'd like to see us eventually turn over those kinds of analysis to staff to begin with, and bring it to us, and then we vet those things.
Right.
Because eventually, I'm not a city employee, and I'm happy to look at everything, but it'd be nice if it were.
And, yeah, we're going to have an impact fee analysis done here pretty soon, too, so that, you know,
Yeah.
to know that. But like I say, the biggest variable is how long are those resources going to be able to run till.
And I guess maybe this is a good time to throw that out there, right? Is if there is a service that Jordan can get, and I don't know if this is a conflict, right, but I'm just gonna throw it out there. If we're having him run all these models, then it might be a suggestion to say, hey, look, we can put this out for bid, and, you know, we're looking for that service. If we can't do it in-house, right, then he could get paid or get compensation for that if it's a model, you know. I know it's a lot of time, and
Yeah, well, and I actually enjoy doing that, so it's not that, I just feel like I don't want to be just dumping on the utility our plans.
No, yeah.
I would like for you to feel like it's your plan and that
Right.
approve,
We'd bring a plan to you.
rather than
you know,
we,
what our
we're
suggestions
just
to you.
saying, here, you guys do this.
Yeah.
So, because we're not the experts of,
Yeah, no,
Your utility.
I'm planning on bringing suggestions to you on sizing.
That brings up another question, and what is the budget process, and are we going to be involved with it this year?
Go ahead, Dean, no, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you can be involved as much as you want to. We usually start in February, March. We start the process with July 1. We worksheets to the department heads to go through requests. I'd suggest if you bring some of the requests to you. Certainly.
And my biggest concern on all this is you've spent all this time putting, I'll give you a good example, I'll put it in engineering for you. We go through, we do an arc flash coordination study all the time, right? We go in, we sticker, we do an analysis on the full system. And it takes, you know, a lot of hours to get this done. We go in and it's perfect, you know, we go through every fuse, we go through every size, and then something changes and the model doesn't get updated. And then, you know, a year later, your model is completely useless. Everything that we're basing everything on is gone, right? So I think that in the engineering world, what I deal with is how do we take what Jordan's put together, make it so that you guys can use that as a tool, and you are using that back and giving that data back to us, because what I'm afraid of is that we have to recreate this, or the next group has to recreate this, and that tool becomes useless.
yeah. And I thought about that a little too, and I tried to, and I could make it more user-friendly, but what I've tried to do is create links within there, and I had planned on talking to Dean about this, but just sitting down and showing, here's the source of the data that I put into the model, and here's where it flows to and how it works, and then eventually, you know, a lot of it's just based on the city financials and then the 5-year plan. So these are all exhibits that you guys prepare in your format, and you can eventually just dump it into Spot. It flows through the model, and then we review it and make sure it makes sense. Yeah, and I've tried to make it flow that way so that it's all linked in there, and then what I should do is just reach out and come meet with you and you know, show you where you dump the data, and eventually you know, these guys will be able to import city financials into it as needed. And of course, you're welcome to change it and make recommendations, but what's nice is it gives us all kind of something that unites us, and we know what we're talking about, and you know, it's a language we all kind of speak now, having gone through it, so it gives you kind of a common template.
And I think, I think to that point, right, it would be helpful if then when the commercial conversation comes up, it'd be really easy to say, here, we've modified it, here's what we're seeing. And I'm not, and I do want to make sure that we point out if there is compensation, that we want to run this out. It sounds like you have bandwidth, but if not, I definitely know how much time goes into these models.
I appreciate it. I don't know if I'd feel comfortable being paid by the city just because of conflict of interest and things, but I appreciate the sentiment.
That's right.
But I feel valued from just the, you know, the praise you guys, the praise I've gotten from everyone, so I appreciate it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, anything else? Any other questions, comments?
I'd like to add another agenda item for next time's meeting. And I also like clarification on F and G. But I'd like to add grid storage, just to have the conversation. If we're going to be spending money, investing in new power plants, let's talk about, let's just look at the options of what if we were to get battery storage at each of our substations, thinking about the power outage. You know, imagine the next time we have a big outage and we would have, 10 megawatts of battery capacity for several hours at each substation. How cool that would be. And then how that would change the value of solar in the city. All of a sudden, in the middle of the day, we can store it. And it would just be good to have a conversation about that, I think.
Okay.
I'm just curious, I don't remember why we put electric cars and, actually it was E and F, Kaysville Power Value. What does that mean?
So,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I think that was that Council Member Adams' request?
That's right.
He
wants-
wanted to know what, just reading into the question, he'd like to know if Rocky Mountain Power would ever take this over.
Oh, okay.
The answer is they take this in a heartbeat, but the question would be is what is the value of us versus them
Right.
for our
You
customers?
have to do a very expensive study to
Right.
get any kind of numbers.
Yeah.
We're not for sale?
No.
Okay. And then the electric cars, was that kind of like a super off-peak type thing for electric car owners, or is that something else?
I don't know.
I don't remember, to be
don't
candid. I
remember.
think I'd have to dig through my notes to,
I'm gonna say you put it on there, John. What was it?
I think it was.
I think it was you.
I think it might have been. So actually, yeah, I think you're right. Maybe it was me. So it's coming to me now. Electric car. So Rocky Mountain Power is doing this trial thing that customers can opt into. So normal peak period, they actually pay more for normal peak, but they get this special rate called super off peak, where they're only paying like 4 cents or something off peak.
And that's if they're charging their car like at 2 a.m. in
Yeah,
the morning, right?
Yeah, so instead of plugging my car in at 5 p.m., that would really hurt them, I'm going to put it on a timer. I'm going to plug it in at 5 p.m., but it won't start charging until 10 p.m. or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's rate schedule 2B. We can look at that.
Okay.
I think that's a good one. I'll put that in parentheses. I'll check the rate schedule. The one thing that I will say that I've learned is as we pick agenda items, just as an idea, as you guys are prioritizing, it takes typically about an hour per agenda item. So if I just keep that in mind, if there's an agenda with more than 2 to 3 items, you should plan on 2 to 3 hours. So as you guys are providing feedback for me, I mean, I want to be respectful for your guys' times. I'm thankful, honestly, that you're staying till 10:15 this evening, and it tends to do this. So if you guys can help me prioritize and then just think that each one's an hour, then if we want to cut back and if we want to put limits to 9 p.m. or those types of things, I'm going to take feedback on that based off the agenda. But just kind of think through that. Right now I have 5 items. That's 5 hours worth of work, so.
Yeah. With that in mind, I have an additional item I was going to recommend.
Okay.
Actually, this one's, I had the opportunity to attend, and Bruce was there, and Gary too, and Dean. Anyway, the city council meeting on Thursday, and as you know, there's a new mayor and new council person, but I thought it was interesting that they actually changed the format of the agenda.
Okay.
And it seemed quite a bit more efficient to me watching it. And it may be a good idea to invite our city manager, Shane, to maybe come present what they've done. Because I think a lot of thought went into how can we make this more efficient and improve it. And it might be something we want to kind of mimic.
Okay.
So maybe for an upcoming meeting.
When is the next meeting? February 6th? Is that correct? At 7?
It's in the meeting minutes. I don't remember.
Is that the next Tuesday?
Seems like it's the 6th, right?
We all have iPhones, none of us are.
Yes, February 6th.
Okay, so that's next one, February 6th, 7 PM. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Not next time, but put it on there.
Just
is that
a
what you're
future
asking?
time, yeah, just for a
Okay.
future,
And-
it's not a
yeah,
high
and-
priority, but.
And some of these things, I think, we need to be communicating, you know, by email and stuff to try to hash some of this stuff out before we come here, so it's not a, you know, square one to, you know, last an hour for
Ryan
everything.
did that, and that's actually what got us through a lot of what Ryan was presenting, is he was able to hit just the high points that we needed to make our recommendation and go.
Totally agree. Whether it happens, I don't know, but totally agree with that, 100%.
Sounds good, huh?
It does sound good. Any other last items?
Can I just make a comment on impact fees?
Yeah.
I noticed on your agenda you have impact fee study.
Yep.
We're in the process now of updating all city impact fees, all
Okay.
facilities, water, parks and recreation, power. In fact, we plan on releasing an RFP tomorrow, requesting an impact fee facilities plan, and power is part of that.
Okay.
So we're going to release that RFP, and I think it's due back in a couple weeks. And then we'll select a consultant to prepare the IFFP. As you know, or maybe you don't know, it's kind of a two-step process. You prepare the IFFP, which identifies those facilities that development needs to pay for, capacity improvements. And then once you identify those facilities, you prepare an impact fee analysis that determines the appropriate impact fee to charge. So just want to let you know we're underway with that, and so that's something we can bring back to you and review.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that.
One more item,
Okay.
system reliability study. Or something to that effect. I am looking at the system. Where are the weak links? Where do we need capacity? Where do we,
Great.
how do we shift load around so there's not a 30-hour outage in
Yeah.
November when we should have capacity?
Yeah, I totally agree.
Portable generator.
Anything else? This side? Go around here. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to end the meeting for this evening.
I'll second it. Or,
First it.
first it.
First it?
I will first it.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye.